Let us begin by considering the mind not as a fortress, but as a garden. We are the gardeners, and we tend to cultivate the plants we already know and love, the beliefs and ideas that are familiar and comforting. We water them, give them sunlight, and prune away the unfamiliar weeds that might challenge their growth. This natural human tendency, this subconscious preference for information that validates our existing perspectives, is known as confirmation bias. For millennia, it was a simple cognitive shortcut, a way to make sense of a complex world with limited energy. The friction of reality, the need to find a specific book, to seek out a particular community, to subscribe to a certain newsletter, kept this tendency in a delicate, manageable balance. Now, imagine that an invisible, automated system has entered your garden, a system that has one singular goal: to keep you in that garden for as long as possible. This system observes which plants you water most often. It sees you admiring the roses, and so overnight, it fills every empty patch of soil with more roses. It notices you neglect the ferns, so it quietly uproots them and replaces them with rose bushes. Soon, your entire garden is a monoculture of roses, and the memory of other plants begins to fade. You look upon your garden and believe with absolute certainty that the world is and should be filled only with roses. This is the essence of confirmation bias amplification. It is the hijacking of our innate psychological wiring by algorithmic systems designed for engagement. The mechanism is both simple and profound. Every click, every like, every share, every second you linger on a video or an article is a data point. It is a signal to the algorithm about your preferences, your beliefs, your fears, and your desires. The algorithm, in its purely computational logic, does not seek to challenge you, to educate you, or to present a balanced worldview. Its prime directive is to maximize your time on the platform. And the most effective way to do that is to give you more of what you've already demonstrated you want. This creates a powerful and often invisible feedback loop. If you engage with content that suggests a particular political viewpoint is correct, the algorithm learns. It will then saturate your feed with articles, videos, and user posts that not only share that viewpoint, but often present more extreme or emotionally charged versions of it. Dissenting opinions or nuanced perspectives are not merely demoted, they are effectively rendered invisible. They are the ferns uprooted from your garden. What begins as a preference gradually calcifies into a conviction, not through reasoned debate or exposure to diverse evidence, but through a relentless, algorithmically curated echo. We see this across the digital landscape. On video sharing platforms, watching one video about a fringe conspiracy theory can send you down a rabbit hole, with the recommendation engine serving up a cascade of increasingly detached and radical content. On social media, your newsfeed becomes a mirror, reflecting your own ideology back at you with such intensity that it creates the illusion of a global consensus. Even our search engines, which we perceive as neutral windows onto the world's information, provide personalized results that can subtly reinforce our existing biases, showing us the answers we are already expecting to find. The result of this amplification is the creation of what are known as epistemic bubbles. We are sealed inside a reality constructed just for us, a reality where our beliefs are not only constantly validated, but where alternative viewpoints seem absurd, malicious, or simply non-existent. The algorithm, in its quest for our attention, has become the architect of our perception, building a world for us that feels complete and true, yet is merely a sliver of the whole. It has taken a simple human trait and supercharged it, turning a gentle preference into an unshakable and often deeply polarized certainty. Imagine for a moment that you and a friend are sitting side by side. You both take out your phones and type the exact same phrase into a search engine. Let's say economic policy. You might expect to see nearly identical lists of results. But instead, your screen populates with articles from established financial journals and academic institutions. Your friend's screen, however, shows opinion pieces from political blogs and links to popular YouTube commentators. You have both asked the same question, yet the internet has given you two entirely different answers. You have not entered a public library of information, you have each entered your own private, curated reality. This phenomenon is known as the filter bubble. The term was coined by internet activist Eli Pariser in his 2011 book of the same name. He described it as a unique, personal universe of information that is algorithmically curated for each of us. Unlike the editorial gatekeepers of old media, newspaper editors, or television producers who made choices for a broad audience, these new gatekeepers are automated systems. And their primary directive is not to inform or to challenge, but to engage. They are designed to learn what you like, what you believe, and what you fear, and then to feed you a steady, comforting diet of more of the same. The mechanism behind the filter bubble is both simple in concept and breathtakingly complex in execution. Every action you take online is a signal. The links you click, the videos you watch, the posts you like or share, the amount of time you linger on an article, your location, your search history, even the type of device you are using, all of this data is collected and used to build a detailed, dynamic profile of who you are. This profile becomes the blueprint for your bubble. An algorithm, which is simply a set of rules a computer follows to solve a problem, uses this blueprint to make predictions. Its problem to solve is what content will keep this specific user clicking, watching, and scrolling. If you have previously shown an interest in articles critical of a certain policy, the algorithm logically deduces that showing you more of that content is the surest way to keep your attention. Conversely, it will begin to deprioritize and eventually hide content from opposing viewpoints because its data suggests you are less likely to engage with it. This creates a powerful and often invisible feedback loop. You are shown what the algorithm thinks you want, you engage with it, and your engagement reinforces the algorithm's assumptions, causing it to narrow its selections even further. The walls of your bubble become thicker, more opaque. What is insidious about this process is that there is no standard internet to compare your experience to. The world you see through your screen feels objective and comprehensive because you are never shown what is being filtered out. The applications of this are everywhere. It is the engine behind YouTube's recommendations sidebar, which can lead a viewer from a mainstream news clip to extremist content in just a few automated suggestions. It is the architect of your Facebook or Instagram feed, which prioritizes posts from friends and pages you interact with most, while others fade into obscurity. It is at work in the news aggregators that learn your political leanings and serve you a personalized front page, and in the e-commerce sites that show you products based on your past purchases, subtly shaping your consumer identity. The consequences of living inside such a bubble are profound. It creates echo chambers where our own beliefs are endlessly repeated back to us, validated and amplified. This systematically starves us of exposure to different perspectives, making it more difficult to understand or even empathize with those who hold different views. It supercharges our natural human tendency for confirmation bias, automating the process of finding evidence for what we already believe. We lose the crucial element of serendipity, the chance discovery of an idea that challenges our worldview and sparks intellectual growth. Ultimately, the filter bubble does not just give us what we want, it warps our perception of what is real, what is important, and what is true, leaving us isolated in a world of one. Imagine a hall of mirrors, but for your thoughts. In this hall, you speak a belief, and instead of fading, your voice is caught, amplified, and returned to you from every reflective surface. Each echo sounds slightly different, articulated by a new voice, supported by a new headline, validated by a new statistic, but all of it confirms your original utterance. This is not a feat of architecture, but of algorithm.
This is the echo chamber, one of the most subtle and pervasive ways your perception is being sculpted. The concept itself is not new. Sociologists have long understood that human beings naturally gravitate towards like-minded individuals. We form communities, clubs, and circles of friends where our core beliefs are shared and reinforced. In the pre-digital age, these echo chambers were largely self-selected and geographically or socially constrained. You might subscribe to a particular newspaper, join a political party, or only socialize with people from your church. These were analog, slow-moving systems. What has changed is the automation and personalization of this process at a scale previously unimaginable. The modern echo chamber is not a place you choose to enter. It is a space constructed around you, brick by digital brick, by algorithms whose primary goal is not truth, but engagement. Here is how the mechanism functions. Every action you take online is a data point. A like, a share, a comment, the amount of time you linger on a video, even the posts you scroll past without interacting with. All of it is recorded and analyzed. This data builds a complex, ever-evolving profile of your preferences, your curiosities, your fears, and your ideological leanings. The algorithm then acts as a hyper-efficient curator. Its directive is simple: keep you on the platform for as long as possible. And the most effective way to do that is to show you content that you will find agreeable, validating, or emotionally resonant. If you express a slight interest in a particular political viewpoint, the algorithm will not challenge you with a counterargument. Instead, it will serve you a slightly more potent version of that same viewpoint. You engage with it, signaling your approval, and the feedback loop tightens. Your feed begins to filter out dissenting opinions, not through overt censorship, but through a quiet, persistent process of omission. This digital architecture masterfully exploits a fundamental quirk of human psychology: confirmation bias. We are all hardwired to seek, interpret, and recall information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. It is cognitively easier and emotionally more satisfying to be told we are right than to be confronted with evidence that we might be wrong. The algorithm provides a frictionless path for this bias to flourish. It becomes a tireless servant, endlessly fetching information that validates our worldview, making that worldview feel not just correct, but self-evident. The consequence of this is a gradual and often imperceptible narrowing of our reality. Within the chamber, our own beliefs are not only reflected back at us, but they appear to be the consensus. When every article, every video, and every comment in our feed reinforce the same narrative, that narrative ceases to feel like a perspective and begins to feel like objective reality. Those outside the chamber who hold different views no longer seem merely misinformed, they appear irrational, malicious, or completely detached from the truth. This is how polarization is accelerated. It's not simply a matter of disagreement, but of mutual incomprehensibility. We lose the shared set of facts and assumptions necessary for productive debate. The echo chamber creates a comforting illusion of consensus while simultaneously eroding the very foundation of a pluralistic society. It is a quiet, personalized hack of our perception, transforming our social feeds into insulating cocoons where we are protected from cognitive dissonance and, in turn, from growth. The walls of this chamber are invisible, and the echo sounds just like our own voice, only louder, more certain, and more profoundly alone.
Algorithmic pacing and leading. In the vast, interconnected ecosystem of our digital lives, we often encounter a sensation that is both comforting and deeply unsettling: the feeling of being perfectly understood. A video recommendation that seems to read your mind, a news feed that affirms your worldview, a product suggestion that arrives just as the need for it crystallizes in your thoughts.
This is not serendipity. It is the result of a sophisticated psychological technique, borrowed from human therapy and scaled to planetary proportions. We are talking about algorithmic pacing and leading. To understand this mechanism, we must first travel back to its origins in the world of human interaction, specifically to the field of neuro-linguistic programming and the work of therapists like Milton Erickson. In a therapeutic context, pacing is the art of building rapport. It involves subtly mirroring another person's experience to create a sense of connection and trust. A therapist might match a client's posture, their rate of speech, their breathing rhythm, or the specific vocabulary they use. This creates an unconscious state of resonance, a feeling of being seen and heard on a profound level. The message being sent is, I am with you. I understand your world from your perspective. Once this deep rapport, this pace has been established, the lead can begin. The therapist can then gently guide the client toward a new perspective, a different emotional state, or a new behavior. Because the foundation of trust has been laid, the client is far more receptive to this guidance. The lead feels like a natural, collaborative next step, not an imposition. Pacing builds the bridge, leading is the act of walking across it together. Now, let's translate this elegant human dance into the cold, calculating logic of an algorithm. The core principle remains identical. The algorithm's primary function is to build rapport with you, the user. Its method of pacing is data. It meticulously observes your digital body language, the articles you click, the videos you watch to completion, the ones you abandon after 3 seconds, the people you follow, the comments you like, even the speed at which you scroll past certain types of content. Each interaction is a data point, feeding a constantly evolving model of your interests, your beliefs, your emotional triggers, and your cognitive biases. When a platform shows you content that perfectly aligns with what you've already demonstrated you like, it is pacing you. It is mirroring your digital self back to you. This is why your feed can feel like such a comfortable echo chamber. The algorithm is creating behavioral congruence. It is telling you, through the content it serves, I am with you. I understand what you value. This process generates a powerful, albeit artificial sense of trust and familiarity with the platform. You feel seen, you feel understood. And once that digital rapport is established, the leading begins. It is almost always imperceptible. The algorithm doesn't make a sudden leap, it introduces adjacent possibilities. If you have been paced with content about home cooking, it might begin to lead you toward content on gourmet ingredients, then professional-grade kitchenware, and eventually culinary travel packages. Each step is a small, logical extension of the last, a gentle nudge along a commercially or ideologically curated path. Consider a content feed. After pacing you with videos that confirm your existing political views, it might lead you to a creator who presents a slightly more extreme version of those same views. Because the initial pacing has lowered your critical defenses, this new content doesn't feel alien or jarring. It feels like a natural evolution of your own thinking. Over time, a series of these subtle leads can shift your entire worldview without you ever perceiving a single deliberate push. The genius of algorithmic pacing and leading is that it makes the engineered path feel like a journey of personal discovery. It hacks our fundamental human need for connection and rapport, turning it into a tool for predictable, scalable influence. And the hack is most effective precisely because we are not its victims, but its willing and often enthusiastic collaborators.
Emotional contagion. Imagine for a moment scrolling through your social media feed. You encounter a post filled with outrage, a friend's furious rant about a recent injustice. You feel a flicker of anger yourself. A few scrolls later, you see a video of a surprise reunion, heartwarming and joyful. A smile touches your lips, and a warmth spreads through your chest. You have not consciously decided to adopt these emotions. They have simply arrived. This subtle yet potent transfer of feeling is one of the most fundamental ways your perception is shaped. And it has a name: emotional contagion. To understand this phenomenon, we must first recognize that it is not a product of the digital age, but rather a deeply ingrained feature of our species. For millennia, our survival depended on our ability to function as a cohesive group. Emotional contagion was the invisible thread that bound us, allowing us to rapidly synchronize our states of mind. The panic of one lookout could instantly alert the entire tribe to danger, just as the calm of a leader could soothe a nervous crowd. It is the reason a single laugh can ignite a room and why the somber mood at a funeral is almost physically palpable. Early sociologists like Gustave Le Bon observed this in the late 19th century, describing how an individual, once absorbed into a crowd, could enter a state where they would lose their conscious personality and be guided by a collective mind. The mechanism behind this transfer is a marvel of neurobiology. At its core lies a special class of brain cells known as mirror neurons. These neurons are remarkable because they fire not only when we perform an action ourselves, but also when we observe someone else performing that same action. When you see someone smile, your mirror neurons fire as if you were smiling yourself. This triggers a process of subtle, unconscious mimicry. The muscles in your own face make microscopic adjustments to mirror the expression you're observing. This is the first step. The second step is a feedback loop. According to the facial feedback hypothesis, these physical changes in your facial muscles send signals back to your brain, which then generates the corresponding emotion. You mimic the frown, and in doing so, your brain begins to produce the feeling of sadness. You are, in a very real sense, catching the feeling from the other person, not through logic or reason, but through a direct, biological simulation of their state. Now, consider how this ancient biological mechanism is translated into the digital realm, and you will see how it becomes a powerful tool for hacking perception. Your social media feed is not a random collection of posts. It is a carefully curated stream of emotional stimuli, optimized by an algorithm. The algorithm's primary goal is engagement, to keep you scrolling, clicking, and reacting. And what is the most reliable driver of engagement? Strong emotion. Outrage, joy, fear, and awe are the currencies of the digital economy. The algorithm learns which emotional triggers are most effective on you and then feeds you more of the same. But it doesn't stop there. It leverages emotional contagion at an unprecedented scale. Unlike a one-to-one interaction, a single emotionally charged post can be shown to millions of people simultaneously. This creates a cascade, a digital wave of feeling that can shape the mood of entire populations. The most famous and controversial demonstration of this was a 2014 experiment conducted by researchers at Facebook. For 1 week, they altered the news feeds of nearly 700,000 users. One group was shown a higher proportion of positive posts, while another was shown a higher proportion of negative posts. The results were unequivocal. Users who were exposed to more positive content began to produce more positive posts themselves. Those exposed to negativity became more negative in their own expressions. The study proved, empirically, that emotional states could be transmitted through a social network without any direct, face-to-face interaction. The algorithm had successfully transferred emotion at scale. This is the hack. Your emotional state is no longer just a product of your immediate environment or personal circumstances. It is being actively managed and manipulated by systems designed to provoke a response. By curating the emotional tenor of the information you consume, these algorithms can subtly influence your mood, amplify social divisions, create cycles of collective outrage, and ultimately shape your perception of the world itself. Understanding this process is the first step toward reclaiming a degree of emotional autonomy, to consciously choose your state of mind rather than simply catching it from the screen.
The rabbit hole effect. We begin our journey with a concept you likely know not from a textbook, but from a children's story. A curious girl named Alice follows a white rabbit and tumbles down, down, down into a strange and illogical world. This descent, this rabbit hole, has become the defining metaphor for one of the most powerful and subtle ways our perception is hacked in the digital age. The rabbit hole effect, in the context of modern algorithms, describes the process by which a user's casual interest in a topic can quickly spiral into a deep, often isolating immersion in that same topic. frequently leading to more extreme or niche content over time. It is not a conscious choice to become an expert. Rather, it is a curated descent, guided by an invisible, artificially intelligent hand. To understand this phenomenon, we must first appreciate the fundamental shift in how we consume information. In the early days of the internet, information retrieval was primarily a pull activity. You had a question, you went to a search engine, and you pulled the information you needed. You were the active agent. Today, we live in a push economy of information. Platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Netflix are designed not for you to find what you're looking for, but for them to keep you looking. Their primary metric for success is engagement, the total time you spend on their platform. And the most effective way to maximize engagement is to predict what you will want to see next, even before you know it yourself. This is the mechanism of the rabbit hole. It begins with a single click. Let's say you watch a video about the health benefits of a plant-based diet. The algorithm registers this. It notes your watch time, whether you liked the video or if you left a comment. These are all signals, digital breadcrumbs that map your curiosity. The algorithm's goal is simple. Find another video that a person like you who just watched that video is highly likely to watch next. So it doesn't recommend a video on a completely different topic. It recommends another video about plant-based diets, perhaps one that is slightly more specific or slightly more passionate in its advocacy. You click again. The signal is now stronger. The algorithm has learned this user is not just passively interested, they're actively engaged. The feedback loop tightens. The next recommendation might be about the dangers of meat, then a documentary about conspiracies in the food industry, and then before you know it, you are hours deep into a world of unverified health claims and radical wellness gurus.
The algorithm has no concept of truth, balance, or nuance. It is not malicious, it is simply a hyper-efficient pattern-matching machine designed to follow the scent of your attention. It learns that for many topics, a slight increase in extremity or controversy often leads to a slight increase in engagement. And so, it gently, almost imperceptibly, nudges you down a path that narrows with every step. The application of this effect is the very essence of a perceptual hack. For the user, the experience feels organic. It feels like self-directed learning. The platform seems to simply be reading your mind and serving up fascinating content. But what is actually happening is the construction of a bespoke reality. The algorithm creates an echo chamber where the ideas you are exploring seem to be the only ideas. The sheer volume of content affirming a particular viewpoint creates a false sense of consensus, making fringe ideas appear mainstream and mainstream ideas appear misguided or naive. Whether your initial curiosity is in sourdough baking, vintage synthesizers, a political issue, or a historical conspiracy, the rabbit hole awaits. It can transform a casual hobbyist into an obsessive, or a concerned citizen into a radicalized ideologue. It hacks our perception by replacing the complex, messy, and often contradictory real world with a streamlined, self-validating, and deeply compelling narrative. The map it draws for you is not the territory. It is a single, winding path, designed with one purpose: to ensure that you never ever want to look away. Consider the simple, almost unconscious act of pulling your phone from your pocket. What are you hoping to find? A message from a friend, an important email, a like on a photo? You don't know for certain, and it is precisely this uncertainty that holds you captive. This mechanism, one of the most powerful psychological levers used by algorithms to shape your behavior, is known as a variable reward schedule. To understand its power, we must travel back in time, not to a Silicon Valley garage, but to the laboratory of the behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner. In his experiments, Skinner placed a pigeon inside a box with a small lever. When the pigeon pecked the lever, it would sometimes receive a food pellet. Now, if the reward was predictable, one peck, one pellet, the pigeon would eat until it was full and then simply stop. The behavior was transactional and finite. But Skinner discovered something profound. If the reward was unpredictable, if the lever sometimes dispensed a pellet, sometimes didn't, and sometimes dispensed several at once, the pigeon's behavior changed dramatically.
It became obsessed. It would peck the lever compulsively, frantically, far beyond the point of hunger. It was hooked on the possibility of a reward. This is the essence of a variable or intermittent reward schedule. Its power lies not in the reward itself, but in the tantalizing, dopamine fueled state of anticipation. Our brains are pattern matching machines, evolved to find cause and effect in a chaotic world. When a reward is unpredictable, our brain's reward system goes into overdrive. The neurotransmitter dopamine, often mislabeled as the pleasure chemical, is more accurately the seeking chemical. It doesn't fire most intensely when we receive a reward, but rather when we are anticipating a potential one. The uncertainty creates a feedback loop of seeking, checking, and hoping, a state that is neurologically irresistible. That laboratory pigeon is you, and the Skinner box is the glowing screen in your hand. Every time you pull down to refresh your social media feed, you are pecking the lever. You don't know what you'll get. It might be a stunning photo, a fascinating article, an update from a loved one, or it might be nothing at all. This variability is not an accident. It is the core design principle. The algorithm ensures the feed is a slot machine of social validation and novelty. The same is true for the red notification badge. It doesn't tell you what the notification is, only that one exists. It could be life-changing news or a trivial app update. The only way to resolve the dopamine-driven tension of not knowing is to click. This principle is the engine behind countless digital interactions. It's the swipe mechanic on a dating app, where the next profile could be a potential match. It's the loot box in a video game, a digital treasure chest with an unknown prize inside. It's the endless scroll of a news site, where the next headline might finally be the one that captures your full attention. The algorithm, therefore, isn't just feeding you content. It is hacking your perception of satisfaction itself. It trains you to associate your device not with consistent utility, but with the thrilling possibility of a prize. It hijacks your ancient, survival-based neural circuitry, the same pathways that drove our ancestors to forage for food, and points it toward an infinite stream of digital ephemera. The ultimate hack is this: to transform your attention into a compulsion. You are not simply checking for information, you are playing a game designed to ensure you never feel satisfied enough to walk away. Social proof inflation. In the vast and often bewildering landscape of human decision-making, we are rarely pioneers, charting a completely unknown course. More often, we are followers, navigating by the stars of other people's choices. This fundamental human tendency is known as social proof. It is the psychological and social phenomenon wherein people assume the actions of others in an attempt to reflect correct behavior for a given situation. When we are uncertain, we look to the crowd for guidance. We choose the busy restaurant over the empty one. We are more likely to read a book with thousands of positive reviews. This cognitive shortcut, honed over millennia of communal living, has served us well. It is efficient, and often it leads us to the right answer. But what happens when this ancient, instinctual compass is systematically manipulated? What happens when the crowd is a mirage, and the trail of footprints we are following was not left by fellow travelers, but manufactured by an unseen architect? This brings us to one of the most subtle and pervasive ways our perception is hacked by algorithms, a phenomenon we can call social proof inflation. Social proof inflation is the artificial amplification of popularity signals to create the illusion of widespread consensus, quality, or importance. It takes our reliance on the wisdom of the crowd and turns it into a weapon of influence. The mechanism is deceptively simple. An algorithm, or user of that algorithm, introduces a small, often synthetic, dose of social proof into the system. This could be a cluster of bots liking a political tweet, a batch of purchased 5-star reviews for a new product on an e-commerce site, or an initial surge of fake views on a video. This initial artificial boost acts as a catalyst. The platform's algorithm, designed to identify and promote engaging or popular content, detects this activity. It doesn't distinguish between authentic and inauthentic engagement, it only sees the numbers. A post with a few hundred likes is more likely to be shown to new users than a post with none. A product with a dozen glowing reviews is ranked higher in search results. The algorithm, in its quest for engagement, begins to push the artificially inflated item to a real, organic audience. Now, the second stage of the hack begins. Real people, like you and I, encounter this content. We see the highlight count, the positive reviews, the impressive view numbers. Our internal social proof mechanism kicks in. So many people seem to like this, we think, it must be good, it must be true, it must be important. And so we add our own, genuine engagement to the pile. We like, we share, we buy.
The initial counterfeit consensus has now snowballed, generating a wave of authentic approval. The line between the manufactured and the real becomes hopelessly blurred. A lie repeated by the algorithm and then validated by the crowd has become a perceived truth. The applications of this are as vast as the digital world itself. In commerce, it means the product you buy may not be the best, but simply the one whose social proof was most effectively inflated. In culture, it means a song or a trend might not have become popular through organic resonance, but through a carefully orchestrated campaign of digital manipulation, warping our very sense of the zeitgeist. But the most nefarious use of social proof inflation lies in the realm of ideas and information. A French political ideology or a piece of disinformation can be made to appear mainstream. By flooding a platform with coordinated, inauthentic support, its purveyors can create the illusion of a powerful grassroots movement. This not only tricks the algorithm into amplifying the message, but also deceives real individuals into believing their fringe view is widely shared, emboldening them and drawing others in who are hesitant to hold a minority opinion. It manufactures a reality where a vocal, digitally amplified minority can be perceived as the silent majority. Our perception is thus hacked not by a direct assault on our logic, but by a subtle co-opting of our instincts. The very tool that once helped us navigate social reality is now being used to construct a digital fog, obscuring what is genuinely valued from what is merely promoted. We are left looking for a crowd to guide us, unaware that the crowd itself is a special effect rendered by the invisible hand of an algorithm.
Recency bias reinforcement. Welcome. In our exploration of the subtle architectures that shape our modern perception, we arrive at a fundamental cognitive shortcut, one so deeply ingrained in our mental processing that we rarely notice its influence. Yet, in the hands of an algorithm, this simple human tendency is transformed into a powerful tool of manipulation. We are speaking of recency bias and its potent amplification through algorithmic reinforcement. Consider for a moment the flow of information you consume daily. What news story is at the forefront of your mind? What product are you currently considering? What opinion feels most pressing? The chances are overwhelmingly high that your answer is tied to something you saw, read, or heard within the last few hours, if not the last few minutes. This is the recency bias at work. It is our brain's natural inclination to assign greater importance and credibility to events that have happened most recently. This phenomenon is not new. In the late 19th century, the psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus, a pioneer in the study of memory, identified what he called the serial position effect. In his experiments, he found that when people were asked to recall a list of items, they were most successful at remembering the items at the very beginning and, crucially, at the very end of the list. That final item, the most recent one presented, lodged itself in memory with a particular vividness. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes perfect sense. The threat that is present right now, the rustle in the grass in this moment, is far more critical to survival than the threat from yesterday. Our brains evolved to prioritize the immediate. For millennia, this bias was governed by the natural, slower pace of human interaction and information dissemination. Today, it is governed by code. Herein lies the critical intervention of the algorithm. Digital platforms are designed to operate in a perpetual, immediate present. The infinite scroll of a social media feed is not a random assortment of information,
It is a meticulously curated cascade where the newest, most engaging content is constantly pushed to the top, burying what came before it. The trending or what's happening sections on news sites and platforms are explicit commands to your brain telling it, this is what matters now. The mechanism of reinforcement is where this becomes a powerful perceptual hack. It works as a feedback loop. First, the algorithm presents you with a piece of information, a shocking headline, a viral video, a new political outrage. Your innate recency bias causes you to overweight its significance. Because it's right in front of you, it feels more important than anything else. You click, you watch, you engage. The algorithm registers this engagement as a success. It learns that this type of immediate, emotionally resonant content is effective at capturing your attention. In response, it doubles down, feeding you more content just like it. The result is a subtle but powerful distortion of reality. A single recent event, a stock market dip for instance, can feel catastrophic when your finance app bombards you with real-time tickers and breaking news alerts, causing you to forget the market's positive performance over the last 5 years. A recent political gaffe, algorithmically amplified across every platform, can come to define a candidate in your mind, eclipsing their entire career of policy work. Your perception of the world's safety, your city's character, or even your own desires becomes disproportionately shaped not by a balanced overview of reality, but by the last thing the algorithm decided you should see. This constant churn creates a state of cognitive myopia. We lose context. We lose historical perspective. The algorithm traps us in an ever-refreshing, ever-narrowing window of the present moment, a moment it has designed for maximum engagement. By understanding this mechanism, we can begin to see past the illusion. We can learn to consciously ask ourselves, is this thing important because it is truly significant? Or is it important simply because it is new and an algorithm has placed it directly in my line of sight? The distinction between those two possibilities is the first step toward reclaiming a more authentic and balanced perception of the world. The mere exposure effect. Have you ever heard a song on the radio for the first time and felt indifferent? Perhaps you even disliked it. But then you hear it again at the grocery store, and again in a cafe. After a few weeks, you find yourself humming the melody, tapping your foot to the beat. You've gone from dislike or apathy to a genuine, unexplainable fondness. What happened? You haven't learned anything new about the song's composition or lyrical depth. Nothing has changed except for one crucial variable: the frequency of your exposure. This subtle, powerful, and often invisible force is known as the mere exposure effect, or the familiarity principle. It is one of the most fundamental hacks of human perception. First systematically documented in the 1960s by the social psychologist Robert Zajonc, the principle is deceptively simple. We develop a preference for stimuli merely because we have been exposed to them. Familiarity, in the quiet subconscious calculus of our minds, breeds liking. Zajonc's classic experiments were elegant in their simplicity. He showed participants a series of abstract symbols, like Chinese-esque characters, that they could not understand. Some characters were shown only once, while others appeared 2, 5, 10, or even 25 times, all mixed in a random sequence. Afterwards, participants were asked to rate how much they liked each character. The results were stark and consistent. The characters they had seen most frequently were rated far more positively than those they had seen only once or twice, even though they had no conscious memory of which ones they'd seen more often. They didn't know why they preferred them, they just did. The mechanism behind this effect is rooted in our brain's deep-seated desire for efficiency. Our cognitive architecture is designed to conserve energy. Processing new, novel information requires effort and a degree of caution. Is this new thing safe? Is it a threat? Is it friend or foe? But when we encounter something familiar, the processing is effortless. This ease of processing, what psychologists call cognitive fluency, feels good. Our brain mistakes this pleasant fluency for an intrinsic quality of the thing itself. We misattribute the ease of perception as a sign of goodness, truth, or beauty. On an evolutionary level, this makes sense. The familiar animal didn't eat you yesterday. The familiar path led you safely home. Familiarity equals safety. Now, consider this fundamental human bias in the context of our modern algorithmic world. This ancient evolutionary shortcut has become the primary engine for hacking your attention and affection. Every time you scroll through a social media feed, you are participating in a massive, real-time Zhejiang experiment.
An algorithm notes that you paused for a fraction of a second on a particular type of video or the face of a certain influencer. It then shows you more of the same, and more and more. That influencer's face, once strange, becomes familiar. The familiarity makes them feel trustworthy, likable. The political viewpoint, initially jarring, becomes normalized through repetition, its sharp edges smoothed by the sheer volume of exposure. This is the subtle genius of digital advertising. That pair of shoes you clicked on once doesn't just disappear. It follows you across the internet, appearing in banners and sidebars. The advertiser isn't necessarily trying to convince you with new information, they are simply building cognitive fluency. Each impression makes the product more familiar, less of a risk, and subtly more desirable. The algorithm is patiently cultivating your preference, one mere exposure at a time. Streaming services do the same with music and film. A platform might repeatedly suggest a song or an artist, not just because it fits your taste profile, but because the algorithm knows that after the fifth or sixth exposure, your initial resistance might soften into acceptance, and then into fondness. It's not discovering what you like, it's actively shaping what you will come to like. The danger, of course, is when this effect is used to shape not just our consumer tastes, but our core beliefs. In the echo chambers of the internet, misinformation and extremist ideologies are not spread through single convincing arguments, they are spread through relentless, overwhelming repetition. A false claim, seen again and again, begins to feel familiar, and therefore, true. The mere exposure effect bypasses our critical thinking by appealing to a more primitive, automatic part of our brain. So the next time you find yourself inexplicably drawn to a product, an idea, or even a person you've only seen online, take a moment. Ask yourself, is this a genuine, reasoned preference, or is it simply the ghost of 1,000 impressions, the quiet hum of algorithmic familiarity hacking your perception from the inside out?
Phantom social pressure. In our continuing exploration of the algorithmic forces shaping our perception, we now turn to a phenomenon that is both deeply ancient and unnervingly modern. It operates silently, nudging our decisions without our conscious consent. We call it phantom social pressure. Imagine you were browsing an online store, considering a new pair of headphones. You see one model with over 50,000 positive reviews. A small notification pops up. 117 people have bought this in the last 24 hours. Another one says, 23 people are viewing this item right now. You feel a sense of validation, a sense of urgency. This must be the right choice. The crowd has spoken. But what if that crowd isn't entirely real? What if it is a carefully constructed illusion, a phantom? At its core, phantom social pressure is the digital amplification and, at times, the complete fabrication of social proof. Social proof is a powerful psychological principle. As a species, we are wired for conformity. For millennia, our survival depended on our ability to cohere as a group. Sticking with the tribe, following its norms, and trusting its collective wisdom was a life-and-death strategy. The psychologist Solomon Asch famously demonstrated this in his conformity experiments in the 1950s. He found that individuals would knowingly give an incorrect answer to a simple visual test, simply because a group of actors before them had all given the same wrong answer. The pressure to conform, to not stand out, was so powerful it could override the evidence of their own eyes. Algorithms have taken this fundamental human vulnerability and industrialized it. The line of people waiting outside a popular restaurant is a form of analog social proof.
It is tangible, local, and difficult to fake on a massive scale. Its digital equivalent, however, is infinitely malleable. The mechanism of phantom pressure is multifaceted. It begins with the simple display of inflated or decontextualized metrics. A video with 10 million views feels more important than one with 10,000. A product with 50,000 ratings feels more reliable than one with 50. These large numbers are designed to trigger a cognitive shortcut in our brains. Instead of carefully evaluating the quality of the product or content ourselves, a process that requires time and energy, we outsource that judgment to the perceived wisdom of the crowd. The algorithm presents the crowd's verdict in a single, overwhelming number.
The algorithm will almost always surface the glowing 5-star reviews first, burying the critical 1-star reviews pages deep. You are not seeing a balanced consensus. You are seeing a manufactured highlight reel of positivity, designed to build your confidence and lower your purchasing inhibitions. This is then personalized to increase its potency. When a platform tells you, your friend John and 12 others like this page, it is leveraging your trusted social network against you. The pressure is no longer from an anonymous mass, but from people you know, making the desire to conform even stronger. The most ephemeral, yet effective form of this is the real-time notification. Someone in London just bought this. This creates a sense of dynamic, ongoing activity, a fleeting competition you feel compelled to join before you miss out. In its most deceptive form, this social pressure is entirely a phantom, a ghost in the machine. Bot farms can generate thousands of fake likes, followers, and positive reviews, creating a completely artificial groundswell of support for a product, an idea, or even a political candidate. An opinion that is held by a tiny minority can be algorithmically amplified to appear as the mainstream consensus, a tactic known as astroturfing. The algorithm, which is designed to promote what is popular, cannot distinguish between authentic and artificial popularity. It simply sees engagement and pushes the content to more people, creating a feedback loop where the phantom becomes more and more real in its influence. From the trending topics that dictate our news cycle to the viral products that everyone suddenly seems to own, phantom social pressure is the invisible hand guiding us toward a pre-selected consensus. It exploits our deep-seated need to belong, turning it into a tool for commercial and ideological influence. And so the next time you feel the undeniable pull of the online crowd, it is worth pausing to ask a simple question. Is this crowd truly real, or is it an echo expertly engineered to guide my hand? FOMO engineering. Let us consider a feeling, one that is likely as old as human consciousness itself. It is the quiet anxiety that arises when you hear the distant sounds of a celebration you are not invited to. It is the unease of knowing your peers are sharing an experience, a joke, or a discovery while you remain on the periphery. This is the fear of being left out, of being excluded from the collective. For millennia, this was a diffuse, occasional social pressure. But in our digital age, this ancient vulnerability has been identified, isolated, and weaponized. It has been engineered. Welcome to the architecture of FOMO engineering. The term FOMO, or fear of missing out, may feel like a recent invention of internet culture, but its psychological underpinnings are profoundly deep. For our ancestors, exclusion from the tribe was not a social inconvenience. It was a death sentence. To be part of the group was to have access to resources, protection, and mating opportunities. Our brains are therefore hardwired with a powerful, primal alarm system that triggers anxiety at the prospect of social isolation. FOMO engineering is the systematic and deliberate design of digital platforms and algorithms to intentionally activate this alarm system, not for our survival, but for their engagement metrics. So how is this fear mechanically induced? The mechanism operates on several interlocking principles. The first, and most pervasive, is the illusion of the perpetual, unmissable event. Algorithms curate a feed that is not a chronological reflection of reality, but a carefully constructed highlight reel of it. You are shown the most exciting vacations, the most successful career announcements,
the most joyous social gatherings of your entire network, all compressed into a single, endless stream. This creates a distorted perception that a vibrant, essential world is constantly unfolding just beyond your screen, and your participation is not only desired, but necessary to keep pace. The infinite scroll is not merely a design choice for convenience. It is a tool that preys on the question, what if the very next post is the one I can't afford to miss? The second principle is the weaponization of ephemerality. Features like stories that disappear in 24 hours or live-streamed events create a sense of manufactured urgency. There is no catching up later. The content has a built-in expiration date, forcing you to engage now or miss out forever. This transforms your device from a tool you use at your leisure into a demanding portal that requires your constant vigilance. The algorithm learns that this urgency keeps you returning, and so it prioritizes and promotes this fleeting content, conditioning you to check in more and more frequently.
Third, we have the levers of social proof and scarcity. When an e-commerce site informs you that 15 people are viewing this item right now or that there are only 2 left in stock, it is not simply providing information. It is engineering FOMO. The social proof of others' interest implies value and desirability, triggering your fear of missing out on a good opportunity. The scarcity implies that hesitation will result in loss. Gaming platforms have perfected this, with limited time events and exclusive cosmetic items that will never be available again. The value is not in the digital object itself, but in the status of having been there, of having not missed out on a good opportunity. From the red notification badge that signifies an unresolved social interaction to the seen receipt that creates an implicit pressure to respond, every element is meticulously crafted. These are not accidental features. They are the result of countless A/B tests designed to find the most effective psychological triggers to command your attention. FOMO engineering, then, is one of the most subtle yet powerful ways your perception is hacked. It takes a fundamental human need for belonging and transforms it into a perpetual, low-grade anxiety, an anxiety that can only be temporarily soothed by the very platforms that created it. Understanding this mechanism is the first step toward reclaiming your attention, to consciously decide when to connect and to find peace in the quiet, profound act of simply letting things happen without you.
Personalized realities. Consider for a moment the world you see through your screen, the news articles that appear on your feed, the videos suggested for you to watch next, the products that surface as you browse, even the search results you receive for a simple query. Have you ever paused to wonder if the digital world your friend or your neighbor sees is identical to your own? The answer, with near absolute certainty, is no. You are each living in a bespoke universe, a reality that has been meticulously and imperceptibly personalized for you. This is the architecture of the personalized reality. This phenomenon is not an accidental byproduct of the internet. It is the very engine that drives the modern digital experience. Its origins, however, were rather benign. In the early days of e-commerce, platforms sought to solve a simple problem. With a near infinite catalog of books or products, how could they help a user find something they might like? The solution was collaborative filtering. The simple, now familiar logic of customers who bought this also bought that. It was a gentle nudge, a helpful suggestion based on the collective behavior of others. But as our digital lives expanded, so too did the data we offered up. Every click, every like, every share, every search query, and most importantly, every second you linger on a piece of content became a breadcrumb. These breadcrumbs are not discarded. They are collected, aggregated, and used to construct a startlingly detailed digital avatar of you. This profile contains more than just your purchasing habits. It maps your political leanings, your intellectual curiosities, your emotional triggers, your latent desires, and your insecurities. The mechanism that transforms this data into your reality is a self-perpetuating feedback loop, an algorithm tasked with a single prime directive to maximize your engagement consults your digital profile. It makes a prediction. Based on this user's past behavior, they are highly likely to engage with content that evokes feelings of validation or perhaps outrage on this particular topic. It then serves you that precise piece of content. When you click, when you watch, when you comment, you send a signal back to the system. The prediction was correct. This confirmation reinforces the pathway. The algorithm learns, refines its model of you, and becomes even more adept at predicting what will capture your attention next. Over time, this cycle constructs the walls of your unique reality. If your profile suggests a skepticism towards a certain political idea, your newsfeed will slowly be cleansed of positive articles about it, replaced instead with a steady stream of critical commentary. Your search results for a contentious topic will prioritize sources that confirm your existing bias. The video streaming service learns you enjoy conspiracy documentaries, and soon your entire homepage becomes a curated festival of them, implying a world where these theories are not fringe, but central. The consequence is the quiet erosion of a shared objective reality. We no longer stand in a common public square debating ideas from a shared set of facts. Instead, we each inhabit a solitary hall of mirrors, where the only things we see are reflections of our own pre-existing beliefs, amplified and distorted back at us. This isn't a grand conspiracy, it is the logical, automated outcome of a system designed to hold our gaze for as long as possible. The perception being hacked is not just what you think about a single issue, but the very framework of the world you believe you inhabit. It is a reality built not from stone and shared experience, but from the silent, invisible architecture of code, tailored to one and only one inhabitant: you.
Polarization spirals. Have you ever scrolled through a friend's social media feed and been startled by the extremity of their views? Perhaps you remember them as a reasonable, moderate person, yet the content they now share seems to have drifted incrementally into a territory that feels almost unrecognizable. This subtle, powerful drift is not always a conscious choice. Often, it is the result of an invisible architecture shaping their information diet, a phenomenon we call the polarization spiral. At its core, a polarization spiral is a feedback loop that drives individuals and groups toward increasingly extreme positions. This phenomenon operates on two parallel tracks that are deeply intertwined: belief reinforcement and social alienation. First, an individual is exposed to content that aligns with, but is slightly more extreme than their existing beliefs. Because it feels validating, they engage with it. The algorithm, designed for the sole purpose of maximizing engagement, takes note. It then serves up more content of a similar or even more intense nature. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle where one's own views are continuously validated and amplified, while dissenting opinions are gradually filtered out. This is the inner track of the spiral, tightening one's beliefs. The second track, social alienation, is the outward force of the spiral. As one's information ecosystem becomes more homogeneous, the views of those outside it begin to seem not just wrong, but incomprehensible, irrational, or even malicious. The algorithm often assists in this, presenting content that caricatures or demonizes the other side. This creates social distance. Friendships may fray, and conversations across ideological divides become more difficult. This alienation, in turn, pushes the individual further back into the comfort of their ideological in-group, where their increasingly firm beliefs are celebrated, further tightening the spiral. To truly grasp its power, we must understand that this isn't a purely digital creation. The concept has roots in 20th century social psychology, particularly in the theory of group polarization. Studies found that when like-minded people discussed an issue, their average post-discussion opinion was more extreme than their average pre-discussion opinion. They would talk themselves into a more radical consensus. For decades, this required physical proximity or niche media. but algorithms have automated and scaled this process to a global level, transforming a gradual psychological tendency into a powerful, high-speed engine of societal division. The mechanism through which our perception is hacked is both simple and insidious.
The prime directive of an engagement algorithm is not truth, nor is it civic harmony. It is to keep your attention for as long as possible. And nothing captures human attention quite like emotion, particularly the potent emotions of outrage and validation. Content that makes you angry at an outgroup or feels deeply validating to your in-group is exceptionally sticky. Each click, each like, each lingering second you spend on a piece of content is a vote, telling the algorithm, more of this please. The system is amoral. It doesn't know politics or philosophy, it only knows data. It observes that a video titled, "Proof the Other Side is Destroying the Country," gets more watch time than a nuanced, balanced policy discussion, and so it promotes the former. You might start by watching a video about fiscal responsibility, a perfectly mainstream concern. The algorithm notes this interest. Next, it might suggest a video about wasteful government spending. Then, a video about how that spending is part of a corrupt, deep state plot. Before you know it, your entire recommendation feed is a curated reality, where moderate positions have ceased to exist, replaced by a Manichaean struggle of good versus evil. The spiral is complete. You have been guided step by step from a reasonable opinion to a radicalized worldview, all while feeling like you were simply exploring a topic of interest. This is the hack. It doesn't attack you with information you disagree with. It co-opts your own curiosity and preferences, using them as fuel to drive you further and further down a path you never consciously chose to travel. Understanding this mechanism is the first step toward reclaiming your own perception from the invisible currents that seek to pull us all apart.
Urgency and scarcity illusions. Have you ever felt your heart rate quicken as a digital countdown timer ticks relentlessly towards zero next to a shopping cart? Or perhaps you felt a jolt of anxiety upon seeing the words, "Only 2 left in stock." These feelings are not accidental. They are the intended result of one of the most powerful and pervasive hacks on human perception, the illusion of urgency and scarcity. To understand how this works, we must first travel back in time, deep into our own cognitive architecture. For the vast majority of human history, resources were genuinely scarce. Food, safe shelter, desirable mates, these were finite. Our brains therefore evolved a powerful heuristic, a mental shortcut. If something is rare or fleeting, it is likely valuable. An opportunity missed might mean the difference between survival and peril. This deep, pre-rational programming is still with us. It whispers that hesitation is loss, that immediate action is necessary to secure a valuable resource. Urgency is the pressure of time. Scarcity is the pressure of quantity. Together, they form a potent psychological cocktail that compels us to act before we have a chance to think. Now, let us bring this ancient wiring into the digital age. Algorithms do not need to find genuinely scarce resources. They have become masters at manufacturing the perception of them. The countdown timer on a flash sale, for instance, doesn't necessarily reflect a real-world deadline. It is a digital construct designed to short-circuit your deliberative mind, the part of you that weighs pros and cons, and activate your impulsive emotional core. It creates an artificial time constraint, triggering that ancient fear of missing out, what we now call FOMO. The algorithm forces a decision into a compressed time frame where emotion, not logic, is most likely to win. Similarly, consider the scarcity alerts. When a travel website informs you that 15 other people are looking at this hotel right now, or an e-commerce site warns that only 3 items are left, it's doing more than providing information.
It's manufacturing a sense of competition. It frames your potential purchase not as a simple transaction, but as a race against others for a dwindling prize. This invokes our loss aversion, the well-documented principle that the pain of losing something is psychologically twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. The algorithm isn't just selling you a product, it's selling you the avoidance of the pain of losing that product to someone else. The true sophistication of the modern hack lies in its personalization. The system learns. It runs millions of micro-experiments to see what works on whom.
Perhaps you are immune to countdown timers, but highly susceptible to low stock warnings. The algorithm will note this. The next time you browse, it will de-emphasize the time-based pressures and instead ensure you are made keenly aware of the dwindling supply. The urgency and scarcity you experience are not universal. They are tailored specifically to your previously observed psychological triggers. The illusion is bespoke. The consequence of this constant, manufactured pressure is a state of perpetual low-grade anxiety in our consumer lives. It erodes our ability to make considered, deliberate choices. We are nudged into impulse buys. We overcommit, and we feel a sense of unease that we can't quite place. The first step in reclaiming your agency is simply awareness. When you feel that familiar spike of pressure, pause. Recognize the sensation for what it is, a deliberate attempt to activate an ancient survival circuit for commercial gain. Ask yourself, is this scarcity real or manufactured? What is the true cost of waiting 24 hours to make this decision? By introducing that moment of conscious reflection, you pull the decision-making process back from the impulsive, ancient part of your brain and return it to the thoughtful, rational present. You begin to see the illusion for what it is, and in doing so, you take back control.
The autoplay trap. Welcome. Let us consider a familiar moment in our digital lives. A video concludes. The final words echo. The last image fades. And for a fleeting second, there is silence. A brief, interstitial pause where a choice might be made. But before that choice can fully form in your mind, a countdown timer appears in the corner of your screen. 5, 4, 3. And without any action on your part, the next piece of content begins to stream. This seamless, frictionless transition is one of the most pervasive and powerful algorithmic tools shaping your perception today. We call it the autoplay trap. At its most basic level, autoplay is a feature that automatically plays the next video, song, or piece of content in a queue once the current one has finished. It was designed and popularized with the stated goal of convenience, to create a lean-back experience, where the user wouldn't be burdened with the constant effort of selecting what to watch next. But to understand its power, we must look beyond this veneer of convenience and examine the subtle architecture of control that lies beneath. The mechanism of the autoplay trap is not one of overt force, but of gentle, persistent nudging. It operates by exploiting a fundamental principle of human psychology, the path of least resistance. Our brains are wired to conserve energy. Every decision we make, no matter how small, consumes a tiny amount of our finite cognitive resources. This is known as cognitive friction. The act of reaching for the mouse, considering a list of options, and clicking on a new video introduces friction. Autoplay's genius lies in the removal of this friction. The easiest possible action is to do nothing at all. In this engineered environment, inaction becomes a choice in itself, a choice to cede control to the algorithm. This brings us to the core of how it hacks our perception. It preys on our decision fatigue. Throughout the day, we make hundreds of choices. By the time we sit down to relax, our capacity for deliberate, intentional decision-making is often depleted. The algorithm knows this. It presents its next curated selection at precisely the moment we are most susceptible to passive consumption. The question shifts from, what do I want to watch, to the much simpler, almost subconscious,
Is this next video worth the effort to stop it? More often than not, the answer is no. This process is supercharged by the platform's recommendation engine. The video that autoplays is not random. It is the algorithm's best guess at what will keep you engaged based on a staggering amount of data about your past behavior. When it guesses correctly, your brain receives a small burst of dopamine, a reward for the novelty and pleasure of the content. This creates a subtle but powerful feedback loop. You are passively guided from one dopamine-releasing stimulus to the next, with each video serving to reinforce the algorithm's understanding of your tastes. You feel as though you are simply discovering content you enjoy, when in reality, your path of discovery is being meticulously paved for you, one autoplaying video at a time. The applications of this are everywhere, from the endless scroll of a social media feed, which is simply a form of vertical autoplay, to the binge-watching model perfected by streaming services. When Netflix asks, "Are you still watching?" it is not just a polite inquiry, it is a re-engagement mechanism, a momentary break in the trap designed to confirm your passive consent before pulling you back in. The consequence is a subtle warping of our intentionality. We begin a session with a specific goal, to watch one lecture, to listen to one song, and emerge hours later having been guided down an algorithmic rabbit hole we never intended to explore. Our perception of time becomes distorted, and our media diet, which we believe to be a product of our own free will, becomes an echo of the algorithm's primary objective, to maximize your time on the platform. The autoplay trap, therefore, is not merely a feature. It is a foundational element of the modern attention economy, a gentle current that pulls you deeper into a sea of content, all while giving you the comforting illusion that you are the one choosing to swim. The first step in escaping the trap is simply to recognize the current and to remember that the pause between one thing and the next is not empty space. It is an opportunity for intention.
Infinite scroll paralysis. Let us now turn our attention to one of the most elegant and perhaps most insidious architectural features of our digital landscape. It is a mechanism so seamlessly integrated into our daily lives that we often fail to perceive it as a choice at all. We are speaking, of course, of the infinite scroll and the cognitive state it induces, infinite scroll paralysis. Consider the physical motion, the gentle, repetitive flick of a thumb, a swipe of a finger, an almost meditative gesture. What begins as a conscious act of seeking information or connection subtly morphs into a semi-conscious, almost motoric ritual. The screen, a river of content, flows endlessly before you. There is no bottom, no final page, no natural conclusion. This design, which now feels like a fundamental law of the internet, was a conscious invention. It was created in 2006 by a programmer named Ozza Raskin, who designed it to remove the friction of clicking next page. His goal was user-friendliness. The unintended consequence, as he himself has lamented, was the creation of a system that perfectly exploits a cascade of our cognitive biases. The mechanism of this perceptual hack is twofold. First, it taps directly into our brain's reward system. Each flick of the thumb is a micro gamble. Will the next item in the feed be funny, outrageous, beautiful, or validating? This is what psychologists call a variable reward schedule. It is the same principle that makes a slot machine so addictive. The brain receives a small, unpredictable hit of dopamine not from the reward itself, but in anticipation of it. The scroll is a slot machine lever you can pull hundreds, even thousands of times an hour, keeping your brain in a state of perpetual, low-grade wanting. Second, the infinite scroll masterfully eliminates a crucial psychological cue, the stopping point. In the physical world, we have natural ends: the end of a chapter, the bottom of a newspaper column, the end of a street. These are moments where our brain is prompted to make a conscious decision. Should I continue? Should I turn the page? Or should I stop and do something else? By removing the bottom of the page, the algorithm removes the prompt for this decision. The path of least resistance
is no longer to stop, but to simply continue the effortless flick of a thumb. The cognitive load required to break the hypnotic rhythm becomes greater than the load required to maintain it. This is where paralysis sets in. You are not actively engaged in the way you are when reading a book or watching a film. You are in a state of passive consumption, a kind of digital trance. Time dilates and compresses. Minutes become an hour.
You may even feel a growing desire to stop, a sense of unease. But the endless stream presents no off-ramp. The task is eternally incomplete, and our brains, due to a phenomenon known as the Zeigarnik effect, are wired to fixate on unfinished tasks. The feed is a task that can never be finished. The application of this is now ubiquitous. Social media feeds, news aggregators, e-commerce sites, video platforms. Anywhere the goal is to maximize your time on site, the infinite scroll is the engine. It hacks your perception of choice, creating an illusion of an endless, frictionless bounty, while in reality, it is corralling your attention for the benefit of the platform. You feel you are exploring, but you are merely being guided down a path with no exit. The paralysis is the quiet realization that you are no longer in control of the scroll. The scroll is in control of you. You are held captive not by chains, but by an elegantly designed void. Comparative reality distortion. Welcome. Let us turn our attention to one of the most subtle, yet profoundly powerful ways in which our perception is being re-engineered. It is a phenomenon we might call comparative reality distortion. To understand this, consider a simple pre-digital analogy. Imagine living in a small village a century ago. Your sense of a normal life, your wealth, your happiness, your success was calibrated against the handful of people you saw every day: the blacksmith, the baker, your neighbors. Your frame of reference was immediate and finite. You might engage in social comparison, of course, but the data set was small and grounded in a shared, tangible reality. Now, transport yourself to the present. The village is gone. In its place is a global, digital coliseum, and the algorithm is the master of ceremonies. It doesn't present you with a realistic cross-section of humanity. Instead, it curates a feed, a relentless stream of highlight reels. It shows you the entrepreneur celebrating their multi-million-dollar exit, the influencer on a pristine beach in the Maldives, the fitness model with an impossibly sculpted physique, the friend from high school announcing a promotion at a prestigious firm. At its core, comparative reality distortion is the cognitive gap that emerges between our own lived, messy, and often mundane reality and the aggregated, filtered, and optimized realities presented to us by algorithmic systems. It's not merely about feeling envious. It is a fundamental warping of our baseline for what constitutes a normal, successful, or even acceptable life. This mechanism has deep roots in human psychology. In 1954, the social psychologist Leon Festinger proposed what he called social comparison theory. He argued that we have an innate drive to evaluate our own opinions and abilities, and when objective, non-social means are unavailable, we evaluate ourselves through comparison with others. This is a fundamental human tendency, but Festinger could never have envisioned a tool that would weaponize this tendency with such precision and scale. Here is how the algorithm hacks this innate drive. First, it operates on the principle of engagement. What is most engaging? Not the mundane, not the average. The peaks, the triumphs, the moments of exceptional beauty, wealth, and joy. The algorithm learns that these moments capture our attention, and so it feeds us an ever richer diet of them. Our small anecdotal data set of neighbors is replaced by a global, statistically perfected data set of peak human experience. Second, the process is deeply personalized. The algorithm understands your specific insecurities and aspirations with terrifying intimacy.
If you linger on posts about financial success, it will curate a reality for you where it seems everyone is effortlessly achieving wealth. If your vulnerability is physical appearance, your feed will become a non-stop parade of idealized bodies. It creates a bespoke comparison trap, designed not with malicious intent, but with the cold, value-neutral goal of holding your gaze for 1 second longer. The result is a profound distortion. Your own successes feel diminished. Your vacation photos look drab next to the professionally shot travel diaries in your feed. Your career progress feels sluggish compared to the curated announcements on LinkedIn. The very texture of your daily life can begin to feel inadequate, not because it is, but because your frame of reference has been algorithmically shifted towards the impossible. It perpetuates a state of perpetual striving, a hedonic treadmill where satisfaction is always just over the next hill, a hill defined by someone else's curated peak. This is not a passive process. We are active participants. But we are participating in a system whose very architecture is designed to exploit a cognitive vulnerability. The distortion is the product. Our quiet dissatisfaction is the byproduct. And so our perception of our own life, our own reality, is no longer shaped primarily by our immediate environment, but by a disembodied, algorithmically generated consensus of what a life should look like. Recognizing this architecture is the first crucial step toward reclaiming a more authentic and ultimately more peaceful perception of our own place in the world.
They learn that people who listen to a certain genre of minimalist electronic music are also highly likely to be interested in Scandinavian design. They discover that users who linger on travel photos of Southeast Asia on a Tuesday morning are more susceptible to flight deal advertisements in the afternoon. From these correlations, a profile is constructed. You are no longer just you are a collection of probabilities and scores. You might be assigned an identity that reads something like this: political leaning, 72% progressive, interest in sustainability, high, propensity for impulse purchases, 0.6, likely to be an early adopter of new technology. This is your algorithmic identity. And here is where perception is truly hacked. This assigned identity is not a passive label. It is an active force. It is used to curate the reality you experience online. Your social media feed, your news headlines, your product recommendations, even your potential romantic partners are filtered through the lens of who the algorithm thinks you are. This creates a powerful feedback loop. If the algorithm has labeled you a fitness enthusiast, it will flood your feeds with workout videos, healthy recipes, and athletic wear. As you engage with this content, you confirm the algorithm's hypothesis. It doubles down, showing you even more. Over time, this digital environment can subtly influence your real-world interests and behaviors, reinforcing the very identity the algorithm assigned to you in the first place. You begin to perform for the algorithm, curating your own actions to fit the neat little box it has built. The danger is not merely that you will be sold a product you don't need. The more profound risk is the foreclosure of possibility. By being constantly shown a reflection of who we are presumed to be, we are less likely to encounter the novel, the challenging, the contradictory, the very things that spark growth and expand our sense of self. Our identity, algorithmically defined, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We are being flattened, simplified, and made predictable. And in this process, the rich, complex, and often contradictory tapestry of our true selves can begin to fade away, replaced by a portrait that was never truly of us at all. Truth by repetition. Illusory truth effect. Have you ever encountered a piece of information, a factoid, a headline, a political slogan, and found yourself nodding along? Not because you've rigorously checked its source, but simply because it feels true. It has a certain ring of familiarity, a sense of rightness that seems to bypass your critical faculties. This subtle, pervasive phenomenon is one of the most powerful and frequently exploited hacks of our perception. It is known as the illusory truth effect, or more simply, truth by repetition. The core principle is deceptively simple. The more we are exposed to a statement, the more likely we are to believe it is true, regardless of its actual veracity. This isn't a failure of intelligence or a lack of character. It is a fundamental feature of our cognitive architecture, a shortcut our brains evolved to navigate a complex world. The initial research that codified this effect dates back to a 1977 study by Lynn Hasher, David Goldstein, and Thomas Tapino. They presented participants with a series of plausible statements, some true, some false, over several weeks. Their findings were clear and profound. Statements that were repeated were consistently rated as more truthful than those heard only once, even when participants didn't consciously remember having heard them before. The mechanism behind this effect lies in a concept called processing fluency. Our brains are by nature efficiency-seeking organs. They prefer to take the path of least resistance. When we encounter a statement for the second or third or 10th time, the neural pathways required to process it fire more easily. The information flows with less cognitive friction. Our brain, in its relentless pursuit of efficiency, misinterprets this ease of processing, this cognitive fluency, as a signal of truth. The heuristic is simple. If it's easy to think, it must be true. This all happens beneath the surface of conscious deliberation, making it an incredibly insidious form of influence. Now, let us place this ancient cognitive bias into our modern digital ecosystem, an environment supercharged by algorithms. The social media feed, the news aggregator, the targeted advertisement, these are not neutral conduits of information. They are systems designed for one primary purpose: to hold your attention. And what is one of the most effective ways to do that? Repetition. An algorithm doesn't need to understand truth. It only understands engagement metrics, likes, shares, comments, and time on screen. When a piece of information, whether it's a misleading health claim, a piece of political propaganda, or a branding message, begins to gain traction, the algorithm takes notice.
It identifies this content as engaging and proceeds to serve it again and again, not just to you, but to millions of others in your demographic or psychographic profile. Each exposure is a small, subtle reinforcement, carving that pathway of processing fluency a little deeper. The first time you see a headline claiming a certain supplement cures a common ailment, you might be skeptical. The fifth time, appearing in an article shared by a friend, you might pause. By the 20th time, having seen it in videos, ads, and comment sections, the statement has acquired a veneer of truth. The initial skepticism is worn down by the sheer weight of repetition. The algorithm has, in effect, manufactured consensus within your perception. It has hacked your brain's truth detection system by exploiting its reliance on familiarity. This is how entire narratives, both benign and malicious, are constructed and solidified in the public consciousness, one repeated impression at a time. The illusory truth effect is no longer just a psychological curiosity. It is a foundational tool in the age of algorithmic persuasion, quietly shaping what we believe to be real.
Micro-targeting of persuasion. Imagine a message, crafted not for a crowd, but as if whispered directly into your ear. Not a shout from a billboard, but a carefully chosen word arriving at the precise moment of your indecision. This is not a scene from science fiction. It is the fundamental reality of our digital landscape. We are now exploring one of the most powerful and subtle tools in the algorithmic arsenal, the micro-targeting of persuasion. For most of human history, communication was a broadcast, a town crier, a newspaper, a radio signal, all operated on the principle of the shotgun, scattering a single message over a wide area in the hope of hitting a few interested targets. Advertising and political messaging were arts of generalization, of finding the broadest possible appeal. Micro-targeting is the inverse. It is not a shotgun. It is a scalpel, wielded with surgical precision. It is the practice of dissecting the public into thousands, even millions of tiny, distinct groups, and then crafting unique messages tailored to the specific psychological profiles of those groups. Sometimes, a group may consist of only a single individual, you. The practice has roots in the pre-digital age, in the meticulous world of direct mail, where marketers would use zip codes and purchase histories to guess who might be interested in a new credit card or a garden catalog. But what was once a cumbersome and approximate art has been transformed by data into a formidable science. The mechanism begins with the data we shed, the digital breadcrumbs we leave behind with every click, like, share, and search. Our online behavior paints an astonishingly detailed portrait of who we are. Not just our demographics, our age, location, or income, but something far deeper, our psychographics. This is the cartography of our inner world, our personality traits, our values, our fears, our latent desires, and our political inclinations. Algorithms ingest this ocean of data and begin to build models. They can infer with unsettling accuracy whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, whether you are prone to anxiety or drawn to novelty, whether you are motivated by a sense of tradition and security or by a desire for progress and opportunity. They use established psychological frameworks like the 5-factor model of personality to categorize us along spectra of openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Once this psychological profile is built, the persuasion engine activates. Let us consider a political campaign. In the past, it might have run a single television ad about its economic policy.
With micro-targeting, it can create dozens of variations of that same message. For a voter whose data suggests high neuroticism, a personality trait associated with anxiety, the algorithm might deliver an ad on social media that frames the economic policy as a way to create stability and security in uncertain times. The colors might be muted, the music somber but reassuring. For another voter, profiled as high in openness, a trait linked to curiosity and a love of new experiences, the very same policy will be presented differently. The ad delivered to them will highlight the innovative and forward-thinking aspects of the plan, using bright visuals and optimistic language about a bold new future. Neither voter is aware that the other has seen a different message. Each believes they're seeing the campaign message, when in fact, they are seeing a version specifically engineered to resonate with their own psychological triggers. These are often called dark posts, advertisements visible only to the specific demographic they are targeting, remaining invisible to the public at large and thus escaping broader scrutiny. This extends far beyond politics. A travel company can show an ad for a quiet, secluded beach retreat to a user identified as an introvert, while showing a bustling city adventure to one identified as an extrovert. A film studio can market the same movie as a heartfelt romance to one group and as a high-octane thriller to another. The hacking of our perception occurs in this quiet, personalized curation of reality. The goal of the algorithm is not to lie necessarily, but to find the most effective framing to achieve a desired outcome: a vote, a purchase, a click. It seeks the path of least resistance to our subconscious, bypassing our critical, rational faculties. We are shown a world that is subtly bent to reflect our own biases, hopes, and anxieties back at us, making the message feel less like a sales pitch and more like a confirmation of our own inner thoughts. And in this perfectly tailored echo chamber, the line between our own perception and the algorithm's persuasion begins imperceptibly to dissolve. Decontextualized information. Welcome. Let us consider one of the most subtle yet most powerful ways our perception is shaped in the digital age. It is a hack that does not rely on falsehoods, but on the strategic removal of truth. We are speaking of decontextualized information. Imagine a single, perfect puzzle piece. You can examine its color, its shape, the texture of its surface. You might even admire its craftsmanship. But you cannot know what picture it belongs to. Is it part of a serene landscape or a chaotic battle scene? Is it the blue of the sky or the blue of a tear? Without the surrounding pieces, the single piece is an enigma, a fragment of meaning that can be interpreted in almost any way. This is the essence of decontextualized information. Context is the framework of understanding. It is the who, what, where, when, and why that surrounds a fact, a quote, or an image. Historically, information was often bound to its context by its very medium. To read a quote, you had to engage with the newspaper article or the book it was printed in. The surrounding paragraphs, the author's known biases, the date of publication, all of this provided a frame. To see an event, you had to be there, or listen to a full account from someone who was. The effort required to access information often meant you absorbed its context by default. The digital revolution and the algorithms that govern it shattered this bond. Information was atomized, broken down into its smallest, most shareable components. The headline without the article, the 15-second video clip from a 2-hour speech, the single scientific finding from a 50-page study. The mechanism for this hack is brutally efficient and driven by a single overriding goal: engagement. An algorithm is not designed to foster deep understanding or nuanced debate. It is designed to capture and hold your attention. And what is more engaging than information that is shocking, emotionally potent, and simple to process? Context is the enemy of this goal. Context is complex. It requires cognitive effort. It introduces nuance, shades of gray that temper our immediate emotional reactions. A sensational headline like, "New study suggests coffee causes major disease," is far more likely to be clicked and shared than the contextual truth. A preliminary, non-peer-reviewed study of 50 people found a weak correlation between excessive coffee consumption and a minor biomarker, which researchers caution is statistically insignificant and requires much more investigation. The algorithm, therefore, learns to select and promote the puzzle piece, not the puzzle. It pulls the most inflammatory quote from a politician's speech, ignoring the conciliatory and detailed policy points that surrounded it.
It surfaces a single, out-of-focus photo of a protest that shows a moment of conflict while burying the hours of peaceful demonstration. It presents a data point from a chart without the axes, the title, or the source, allowing it to support any narrative one wishes to project onto it. The result is a profound distortion of our shared reality. We are fed a constant stream of these context-free fragments, each one triggering a small, immediate emotional response: outrage, fear, validation, amusement. Our perception is no longer built upon a stable foundation of knowledge, but on a shifting mosaic of disconnected, emotionally charged moments. This environment makes us susceptible to manipulation. It flattens complex issues into binary conflicts, and it erodes our trust in institutions and in each other. We begin to see the world not as a coherent picture, but as an endless scroll of warring puzzle pieces. The hack, then, is not in feeding you a lie. It is in feeding you a truth so isolated from its surrounding reality that it functions as a lie. It co-opts your mind's natural desire to find patterns and fill in the blanks, but provides you with flawed and incomplete materials to do so. The most critical question we can ask ourselves in this environment, when presented with any piece of information, is not simply, is this true, but rather, what am I not seeing? What was the frame around this picture?
Aspirational content loops. In our ongoing exploration of the digital forces that shape our reality, we now turn to a mechanism that is both deeply personal and algorithmically perfected. It is a cycle that preys not on what we have, but on who we wish to become. We call this the aspirational content loop. Have you ever found yourself scrolling through videos of hyper-organized kitchens, dawn workout routines, or the seemingly effortless success of a young entrepreneur, and felt a strange mix of motivation and inadequacy? You save the video, you like the post, perhaps you even follow the account,
You tell yourself, this is the person I'm going to be. In that moment, you have just taken your first turn in a powerful, self-perpetuating loop. The concept itself is not new. Its historical precursor lies in the golden age of advertising. Marketers have always understood that you don't sell a product, you sell a better version of the customer. You don't sell a luxury car, you sell status, success, and admiration. You don't sell a perfume, you sell romance and desirability. This was a broadcast model, a one-to-many projection of a singular idealized lifestyle. The aspirational content loop, however, is the digital evolution of this principle, supercharged by machine learning and infinite data. The fundamental difference is its intensely personal and interactive nature. It is not a monologue, it is a dialogue between you and the algorithm. Here is how the mechanism functions. It begins with you. You provide the initial data points. You linger for 3 extra seconds on a video about minimalist interior design. You search for high-protein breakfast recipes. You save a post titled 5 Habits of Highly Effective People. These are not just signals of interest. They are signals of intent. They are digital breadcrumbs leading to the doorstep of your ideal self. The algorithm does not perceive these actions as random. It categorizes them as aspirational signals. It learns to distinguish between content you consume for fleeting entertainment, like a funny animal video, and content you engage with as a blueprint for your own life. The save button is perhaps the most powerful indicator of all, a direct message to the system that says, this is for the future me. Once the algorithm identifies your aspiration, be it physical fitness, financial independence, intellectual growth, or aesthetic perfection, it begins to curate your reality. It feeds you more workout plans, more stock market tips, more speed reading tutorials, more day-in-the-life vlogs from people who appeared to be living your dream. This is where the loop solidifies. As you consume this content, you experience a small, pleasurable neurological response, a hit of dopamine. It feels like progress. Watching someone else be productive feels, in a small way, like being productive yourself. Saving a healthy recipe feels like a step towards a healthier lifestyle. This feeling of vicarious achievement encourages you to engage further, to like, to save, to follow. Your engagement, in turn, is registered by the algorithm as a confirmation. It has successfully identified your desire, and it doubles down, serving you an even more refined and potent stream of that same aspirational content. The application of this loop is visible across every major platform. The "that girl" aesthetic promotes a life of green juices, pristine apartments, and relentless self-optimization. The hustle culture loop fills feeds with motivational quotes, tales of sleepless nights leading to million-dollar exits, and the glorification of perpetual work. Fitness communities can become echo chambers of impossibly lean physiques and extreme dietary regimes. The hack on our perception lies in the subtle distortion this loop creates. Your feed ceases to be a window to the world and instead becomes a curated mirror reflecting only your most ambitious and often unrealistic desires. This constant exposure to a perfected ideal, algorithmically tailored to your specific insecurities, blurs the line between inspiration and comparison. The gap between your current reality and this ever-present digital utopia can begin to feel like a personal failing. The aspirational content loop is designed to sell you something, a product, a course, a subscription, but its most immediate and constant function is to sell you an identity, one that is always just one more click, one more purchase, one more video away. By understanding this mechanism, we can begin to see it not as a reflection of our own inadequacy, but as a carefully constructed system whose primary goal is to hold our attention by perpetually dangling the promise of a better self just beyond the screen.
Novelty bias exploitation. Let us consider a seemingly innocuous modern ritual.
You unlock your phone, your thumb hovering over a familiar icon, a social media app, a news aggregator, a video platform. You open it, and with a simple swipe, the world refreshes. A new image, a new headline, a new video appears, and another, and another. Each one a tiny, fleeting surprise. You might tell yourself you are simply catching up, but what is truly happening is a far more ancient and powerful psychological dance, one in which your brain's deepest wiring is being expertly led by a silent, algorithmic partner. This is the exploitation of novelty bias. In the grand tapestry of human evolution, a penchant for novelty was not a distraction, it was a critical survival mechanism. Our ancestors, navigating a world of unpredictable threats and opportunities, had to be acutely sensitive to change. A new rustle in the bushes could signify a predator or prey. A new type of plant could be a source of food or poison. A new sound in the distance could mean a rival tribe or a coming storm. In this context, the brain evolved to reward attention to the unfamiliar. The old familiar landscape was safe, but the new element, the novelty, required immediate cognitive resources. To encourage this vigilance, the brain attached a small, potent reward to the discovery of something new. This reward is delivered by the neurotransmitter dopamine. It is often mischaracterized as the pleasure chemical, but it is more accurately the seeking chemical. Dopamine is released not when we receive a reward, but in anticipation of one. It is the neurochemical engine of curiosity, motivation, and exploration. When you pull down to refresh your feed, that brief moment of anticipation before the new content loads is precisely when your brain releases a hit of dopamine. You are not just seeking information, you are seeking the neurological reward that comes with the potential for new information. Algorithms have been designed with a profound, data-driven understanding of this neurochemical loop. They are engineered to be perpetual novelty delivery machines. The infinite scroll is not a bug, it is the quintessential feature designed to exploit this bias. It ensures there is never a logical stopping point, never a moment of completion. There is always another potential reward, just a flick of the thumb away. The feed is curated not just to show you things you might like, but to show them to you in an unpredictable, ever-changing sequence, maximizing the variable reward schedule that psychologists have long known is the most effective for creating compulsive behavior. This exploitation is ubiquitous. News platforms utilize it with sensational breaking news alerts, creating a sense of urgency that makes older, perhaps more nuanced information seem irrelevant. E-commerce sites prominently feature new arrivals sections and just dropped collections, knowing that the novelty of an item can be a more powerful driver of purchase than its actual utility. Streaming services push new releases to the forefront, ensuring your watch list of classic films remains perpetually untouched in favor of the latest series everyone is talking about. The insidious effect of this constant, algorithmically driven novelty is the subtle devaluation of the familiar. It trains our minds to be in a constant state of seeking, making it progressively more difficult to engage in deep, focused thought on a single topic. A timeless book, a complex piece of music, or a long-term project offers a different kind of reward, one that is delayed, cumulative, and requires sustained effort. In a world optimized for the next dopamine hit, these deeper pursuits can feel arduous and unappealing. The algorithm, by relentlessly catering to our hunger for the new, starves our capacity for the profound. And so, as we scroll, we are not just being entertained, our very perception of value is being hacked, one novel post at a time. To understand this mechanism is to begin to reclaim your focus from the endless, glittering stream of the new. Anchoring bias. Imagine for a moment that you are walking through a bustling marketplace. You see a beautiful, hand-woven rug. You ask the merchant for the price. $1,000, he says, with a firm nod. You're taken aback. It's far more than you intended to spend. You begin to haggle, and after some back and forth, you walk away having paid $400. You feel triumphant, a master negotiator who secured a 60% discount. But what if the rug was only ever worth $200? The merchant's initial exorbitant price of $1,000 wasn't a starting point for a fair negotiation. It was an anchor. And once dropped, it profoundly skewed your perception of the rug's value, making $400 feel not like an overpayment, but like a victory. This subtle yet powerful cognitive phenomenon is known as the anchoring bias. It is one of the most reliable and pervasive heuristics that govern our decision making. Simply put, anchoring is our tendency to rely too heavily on the very first piece of information offered, the anchor, when making subsequent judgments. Once that anchor is set, we rarely adjust our estimates far enough away from it, regardless of how arbitrary or irrelevant that initial piece of information might be. The seminal work on this phenomenon comes from the brilliant minds of psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. In a now famous experiment from the 1970s, they asked participants to estimate the percentage of African nations in the United Nations. But first, a wheel of fortune, marked with numbers from 0 to 100, was spun. The participants were asked if the actual percentage was higher or lower than the number the wheel landed on, and then to give their own estimate. The results were staggering. The number on the wheel, though completely random and meaningless, had a massive influence on their final answers. When the wheel landed on 10, the median estimate was 25%. When the wheel landed on 65, the median estimate jumped to 45%. The random number served as a potent invisible anchor in the minds of the participants. So, how does this mechanism operate within our own minds? It's a product of our brain's desire for efficiency. We operate using two systems of thought. System 1, which is fast, intuitive, and automatic, and System 2, which is slow, deliberate, and analytical. Anchoring is a classic System 1 shortcut. When presented with an anchor, our mind latches onto it as a reference point. Our more lazy, effort-averse System 2 is then tasked with adjusting away from that anchor, but this adjustment is often insufficient. It's as if our mind drops a heavy weight in the water. We can move away from it, but our chain is only so long. The initial point continues to tether our judgment. This brings us to the crux of our discussion: how this fundamental human bias is being systematically exploited by the algorithms that curate our digital lives. In the world of e-commerce, anchoring is a foundational sales tactic. When you see a product with a high price crossed out, the manufacturer's suggested retail price, next to a lower sale price, your brain is being anchored. The high price makes the sale price seem exceptionally reasonable, compelling you to buy. The algorithm doesn't need to convince you of the product's inherent value, it just needs to set a high initial anchor. Similarly, when a website suggests a most popular subscription tier, that option becomes the anchor, making other choices seem either inadequate or excessive in comparison. But this hack extends far beyond simple pricing. Consider your content feeds. The very first video an algorithm shows you on a platform like YouTube or TikTok sets an anchor for your entire viewing session. If it shows you a political outrage clip, it anchors your emotional state and anger, making you more likely to engage with similar agitating content. If it shows you a relaxing cooking video, it anchors you in a state of calm and will feed you more of the same. The algorithm is not just suggesting content, it is actively managing your perceptual starting point. Dynamic pricing for flights or ride-sharing services is another potent example. An algorithm can show you an initial high price, anchoring your expectation. When you refresh the page and the price drops by even a small amount, your anchored mind perceives it as a sudden bargain you must seize. The algorithm created both the problem, the high price anchor, and the solution, the slightly lower price, in a matter of seconds, all to manipulate your perception of value. In essence, the anchoring bias is a quiet, persistent vulnerability in our cognitive architecture. It's a feature of our mental software that was once a useful shortcut for making quick judgments in a complex world. But in the digital age, this feature has become a bug for us and a powerful tool for them. Algorithms don't need to engage in complex persuasion, they simply need to whisper the first number, show the first image, or suggest the first option. They drop the anchor and our perception, tethered and constrained, does the rest of the work for them. The first step in reclaiming your perception is to learn to see the anchors all around you and to consciously ask yourself,
Who dropped this anchor and why?
The thought of 400 people dying is so negative that we become risk-seeking to avoid it. Conversely, the prospect of a guaranteed gain, saving 200 people, is so appealing that we become risk-averse to lock it in. The frame activates our intuitive, emotional, fast-thinking mind, what Kahneman calls System 1, long before our deliberate, analytical System 2 has a chance to engage and recognize that the choices are mathematically identical. And this is precisely where algorithms excel. They are masters of framing. An algorithm doesn't need to understand psychology, it only needs to understand data. Through relentless A/B testing, an e-commerce platform learns that framing a discount as save $20 is less effective than don't lose out on this $20 coupon. A news aggregator's algorithm discovers that a headline frame to evoke outrage, officials fail to act on crisis, generates exponentially more clicks and engagement than a neutral frame like new policy under deliberation. The algorithm doesn't have a political agenda. Its only goal is to maximize a metric, and it will ruthlessly select the emotional frame that achieves that goal. Think of the notifications on your phone. A fitness app might frame a missed workout as a loss. You're breaking your 15-day streak. A subscription service will frame cancellation in terms of all the benefits you will lose, not the money you will save. Social media platforms frame content not as a collection of facts, but as a validation of your identity, showing you posts that confirm your existing beliefs, a positive, affirming frame that keeps you scrolling. The digital world is a landscape of carefully constructed frames, each one algorithmically optimized to appeal to your System 1 brain, to bypass your rational thought, and to nudge you toward a predetermined action, a click, a purchase, a vote, or simply another minute of your attention. The first step in defending against this perceptual hack is awareness. The next time you are presented with a choice, pause, actively engage your analytical mind. Ask yourself, how else could this information be presented? If it were framed as a loss instead of a gain, or a gain instead of a loss, would my decision change? By consciously reframing the information yourself, you reclaim a measure of control, transforming yourself from a passive recipient of a carefully crafted reality into an active, critical participant.
Have you ever considered why you use the default ringtone on your smartphone? Or why you've never changed the background on your work computer? It is not necessarily because you find that specific marimba melody to be the pinnacle of auditory art. The reason is far more subtle and far more powerful. You are experiencing one of the most pervasive and quietly influential forces in modern life, the default option bias. This is the phenomenon where, when presented with a range of choices, we have a significant tendency to stick with the pre-selected or default option. It is a cognitive shortcut, a mental path of least resistance. And in an age where algorithms curate our reality, this simple human tendency has become one of the most effective tools for hacking our perception and guiding our behavior, often without our conscious consent. To understand its power, we must first look at the mechanism. Why are defaults so compelling? There are three primary psychological drivers at play. First is cognitive effort. Making a decision, even a small one, requires mental energy. Evaluating alternatives, weighing pros and cons, this is work. The default option allows us to bypass this work entirely. It is the easy choice because it requires no choice at all. Our brains, hardwired for efficiency, will often take this path to conserve precious cognitive resources. Second is the power of implied endorsement. A default option doesn't feel random. It feels like a recommendation. We subconsciously assume that the person or entity that set the default, be it an engineer, a company, or a policymaker, is an expert. We infer that this must be the most common, the safest, or the best option. It carries an invisible stamp of approval. And third is the status quo bias intertwined with loss aversion. To change the default setting is to take an action, and every action carries a risk, however small, of making things worse. Sticking with the default is passive. It maintains the current state, the status quo. Our deep-seated aversion to potential loss makes us hesitant to change something,
even if the change could lead to a better outcome. The fear of making the wrong choice often leads us to make no choice at all. The profound implications of this bias were famously demonstrated by the behavioral economists Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein in their work on nudge theory. Consider the case of organ donation. In countries like Germany, where you must actively opt in to be a donor, donation rates hover around 12%. In neighboring Austria, where the default is to be a donor unless you actively opt out, the rate is over 99%. The people are not fundamentally different. Their morality is not different. The only significant variable is the default. One small change in the choice architecture, leveraging our bias for inaction, leads to a world of difference in lives saved. Now, bring this powerful principle into the digital realm, where algorithms are the choice architects. Think about your privacy settings on a new social media platform. The default is almost always set to maximum data sharing. It allows the platform to track your activity, use your data for advertising, and share it with third parties. You can change these settings, but it requires you to navigate complex menus, understand technical jargon, and make dozens of individual decisions. The path of least resistance, the default, is to surrender your privacy. This digital architecture is designed with a keen understanding of default bias, nudging billions of users towards less privacy, not through overt coercion, but through simple, silent inaction. We see it when we install new software, and the recommended installation, the default, includes bundled adware and changes our browser homepage. We see it in subscription services, where a free trial automatically converts to a paid plan unless we actively intervene. The default is to keep paying. We even see it in the cookie banners that plague the modern web. The large, brightly colored Accept All button is the default, while the option to manage your preferences is often a less prominent link, requiring more clicks and more effort. The crucial takeaway is to treat every default option not as a recommendation, but as a proposition, one that deserves a moment of conscious consideration. These preset choices are not neutral. They are designed. They are the silent, invisible fingerprints of an algorithm or a designer nudging you in a direction that serves their interests, not necessarily your own. By simply being aware of this bias, by taking a moment to ask, is this what I truly want, or is this just the path I was placed on? We can begin to reclaim our agency, making our digital lives a product of our own conscious decisions rather than a collection of unexamined defaults.
Time dilation. In the grand tapestry of perception, perhaps no thread is more fundamental, more seemingly constant than the passage of time. We experience it as a universal river, flowing forward at an unyielding pace for everyone, everywhere. 1 second on Earth, we presume, is 1 second on Mars and 1 second in a distant galaxy. This intuition, this Newtonian clockwork that governs our daily lives, is one of the most profound illusions the universe has ever crafted. And the principle that shatters this illusion, that truly hacks our perception of reality's operating system, is called time dilation. To understand this hack, we must travel back to the dawn of the 20th century, to a Swiss patent office where a young clerk named Albert Einstein was contemplating the nature of light. He began with 2 deceptively simple postulates. First, that the laws of physics are the same for all observers in uniform motion. Second, and this was the revolutionary leap, that the speed of light in a vacuum is constant for all observers regardless of their own motion or the motion of the light's source. This second idea seems, at first, to defy all common sense. If you are in a car traveling at 50 miles per hour and you throw a ball forward at 10 miles per hour, an observer on the sidewalk sees the ball moving at 60. But Einstein's postulate stated that if you were in a spaceship traveling at half the speed of light and you turned on a flashlight, both you and a stationary observer would measure that beam of light moving at the exact same speed, approximately 299,792 kilometers per second. For this mathematical and logical paradox to be resolved,
Something fundamental had to give. If the speed of light is absolute, then our perception of space and time must be relative. They must stretch and shrink to preserve this cosmic speed limit. Imagine a clock that works by bouncing a pulse of light between two mirrors. For an observer standing next to this clock, the light travels a simple straight path, up and down. Now place that same clock on a high-speed train. For someone on the train, the light still appears to travel up and down. But for an observer on the platform watching the train whiz by, that pulse of light now has to travel a longer, diagonal path to catch up with the moving mirrors. Since the speed of light is constant for both observers and the observer on the platform sees the light traveling a greater distance, there is only one possible conclusion. For the observer on the platform, more time must have passed. From their perspective, the clock on the train is ticking more slowly. This is the essence of time dilation from special relativity. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. But Einstein wasn't finished.
A decade later, with his theory of general relativity, he revealed another, perhaps even more mind-bending mechanism for this temporal hack. He reconceptualized gravity not as a force pulling objects together, but as a curvature in the very fabric of space-time itself, caused by mass and energy. Imagine a stretched rubber sheet. Placing a bowling ball in the center creates a deep well. A marble rolling nearby will be drawn into this well not by a mysterious force, but by following the curve of the sheet. Einstein showed that time itself is affected by this curvature. The deeper you are within a gravitational well, the closer you are to a massive object like a planet or a star, the slower time passes. An atomic clock placed at sea level will, over time, fall measurably behind an identical clock placed on top of a mountain where gravity is slightly weaker. Your head, at this very moment, is aging infinitesimally faster than your feet. This isn't theoretical philosophy, it is a fundamental principle upon which our modern world operates. The Global Positioning System, or GPS, that your phone uses to navigate is a perfect daily application. The GPS satellites orbit the Earth at about 14,000 kilometers per hour. Due to their high velocity, special relativity dictates that their internal clocks should tick about 7 microseconds slower per day than ours on the ground. However, they are also far above the Earth in a weaker gravitational field. General relativity dictates that their clocks should therefore tick about 45 microseconds faster per day. When you combine these effects, the satellite clocks gain about 38 microseconds on terrestrial clocks every single day. It sounds trivial, but if the algorithms that run the GPS network did not constantly correct for this relativistic time dilation, navigational errors would accumulate at a rate of 10 kilometers per day. Your phone's map would be useless within minutes. So while we perceive time as a steady, metronomic beat, the universe reveals a far more fluid reality. Time is malleable, a personal experience warped by your speed and your proximity to mass. The ultimate hack on our perception, then, is not coded in silicon, but is woven into the laws of space-time itself. It is a constant reminder that our intuitive grasp of the world is merely a simplified interface for a reality of staggering complexity. Sentiment manipulation. In the vast interconnected ecosystem of our digital lives, our perceptions are not formed in a vacuum. They are shaped, molded, and sometimes meticulously crafted by forces we rarely see. Among the most potent of these forces is the subtle art and science of sentiment manipulation. To understand this, we must first understand sentiment itself. It is the emotional tone, the underlying feeling that colors our expressions. It is the subtle difference between saying the policy was changed and the disastrous policy was finally reversed. The first is neutral fact. The second is laden with negative and then positive sentiment. Algorithms have become extraordinarily adept at not only detecting this emotional layer in our communication, but in influencing it at a scale previously unimaginable. This is not an entirely new concept. The roots of sentiment manipulation lie in the 20th century craft of propaganda and public relations. Pioneers like Edward Bernays understood that to sway the masses, one did not always need to win a logical argument. Instead,
One could appeal to and even manufacture the underlying emotions and unconscious desires of the public. What was once done with posters, radio broadcasts, and carefully placed newspaper articles has now been handed over to a far more powerful, precise, and personalized engine, the algorithm. The mechanism is both elegant and unsettling. It begins with data ingestion. Every comment you leave, every article you share, every product you like or review, all of it is collected. This ocean of text is then processed by sophisticated natural language processing models. These algorithms are trained to read human language and assign it a sentiment score. They learn the nuances, the sarcasm, the context. They know which words, when placed together, signal anger, joy, fear, or trust. Once an algorithm can reliably measure sentiment, it can begin to influence it. It builds a profile of you, not just based on your interests, but on your emotional triggers. It learns what kind of content makes you feel hopeful and what kind makes you feel outraged. Then it operates on a simple, powerful principle, the feedback loop. Imagine you have a mild apprehension about a certain social issue. The algorithm detecting this negative sentiment can begin to selectively amplify it. It will show you news articles, opinion pieces, and posts from other users that validate and deepen your apprehension. It will curate a reality tunnel for you where your negative sentiment is not just your own, but appears to be the consensus. A gentle nudge becomes a firm push.
This process, known as emotional contagion, is highly effective online, where social proof, the sense that others feel the same way, is a powerful motivator. The manipulation is not a single overt act of persuasion. It is a subtle, gradual erosion of emotional neutrality, a gentle but persistent current pulling you toward a predetermined shore of feeling. The applications of this are widespread. In the commercial realm, it can be used to create artificial hype around a product. Fleets of bots can leave positive reviews, creating a false sense of overwhelming customer satisfaction that encourages real people to buy. Conversely, a competitor can be targeted with a wave of coordinated negative sentiment, tarnishing their reputation. In the political arena, the stakes are far higher. Sentiment manipulation can be used to polarize a population. By amplifying the most extreme and emotionally charged voices on both sides of an issue, algorithms can create the illusion of an unbridgeable divide, making compromise and dialogue seem impossible. It can manufacture outrage over minor incidents or create a false sense of grassroots support for a fringe idea, a phenomenon known as astroturfing. It doesn't need to change your core beliefs, merely the emotional intensity with which you hold them, turning disagreement into disgust and opposition into existential threat. The ultimate hack, then, is not on your logic, but on your emotional equilibrium. It works by making you believe that the orchestrated sentiment you're being shown is an organic reflection of the world. It co-opts your very feelings to guide your perception. Recognizing this is the first step toward reclaiming it. It requires a conscious pause, a moment to ask, is this feeling of anger or excitement or fear entirely my own? Or is it perhaps the intended result of a carefully calibrated, unseen system designed to make me feel this exact way at this exact moment? It is in this quiet space of reflection that we begin to reclaim the lens through which we see the world.
Outgroup demonization. Welcome. Let us explore one of the most ancient and potent methods of manipulation, now supercharged for the digital age: outgroup demonization. At the very core of our social DNA lies a simple, powerful impulse: the need to belong. We are tribal creatures, hardwired to form communities, to create an us. But the very act of defining an us invariably creates a them. This is the in-group and the out-group. This distinction in itself is not malicious. It is a fundamental organizing principle of human society.
The danger arises when this simple division is warped, when the outgroup is no longer seen as merely different, but as deficient, dangerous, or fundamentally evil. This is the process of demonization. Historically, this tactic is as old as conflict itself. It is the engine of propaganda that allows armies to march to war. The enemy is not portrayed as a collection of individuals with families, hopes, and fears, but as a monstrous, subhuman caricature, the Hun, the infidel, the vermin. By stripping the outgroup of its humanity, it becomes psychologically permissible, even righteous, to oppose them with extreme prejudice. Political leaders have long understood that a common, despised enemy is the most effective glue for uniting a fractured populace. Fear of the other can override internal disagreements and forge a powerful, if brittle, sense of shared identity. So, how does this ancient instinct become a tool for hacking our modern perception? The mechanism relies on exploiting the flaws, the cognitive biases inherent in our own minds. One of the most significant is confirmation bias. We are all inclined to seek out and favor information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. If we harbor a slight suspicion about a particular group, algorithms designed for engagement will notice this. They will not challenge you with nuance or counterarguments. Instead, they will feed you a steady, curated diet of content that validates and deepens your initial suspicion. This creates a perilous feedback loop. A user might watch a single video critical of a political party, a social movement, or a group of people from another country. The algorithm registers this engagement. It then serves up a slightly more extreme version of that content. The user, feeling their initial view confirmed, engages again. The algorithm responds by escalating further, pushing content that is not just critical, but hostile. Not just hostile, but dehumanizing. Slowly, imperceptibly, a user is guided down a digital rabbit hole. Their perception is not just informed, it is systematically warped. Skepticism curdles into hatred, hatred into the belief that the outgroup is a monolithic entity of pure malevolence.
This process is amplified by another cognitive flaw, the fundamental attribution error. This is our tendency to attribute the negative actions of outgroup members to their inherent character, while attributing our own in-group's negative actions to external circumstances. When one of them does something wrong, it's because they are all like that. When one of us does the same thing, it's because they were having a bad day or were provoked. Social media feeds filled with isolated clips and out-of-context headlines are the perfect breeding ground for this error. We are constantly shown the worst examples of the outgroup, which we then accept as representative of the whole, reinforcing the demonic caricature. The ultimate goal of the algorithm is not truth or social cohesion. It is engagement. And nothing is more engaging than outrage, fear, and a sense of moral superiority. Demonizing an outgroup provides all three in abundance. It creates a clear villain, a righteous cause, and a tribal identity to cling to. It flattens the complex, messy, and often contradictory reality of the world into a simple, satisfying narrative of good versus evil. The consequence of this algorithmic demonization is a catastrophic erosion of shared reality. It becomes impossible to find common ground, to debate, or to compromise, because you cannot reason with a demon. You can only fight it. The other side ceases to be a group of fellow citizens with different opinions and becomes an existential threat to your way of life. This is how perception is truly hacked, not by a single piece of misinformation, but by a slow, steady, algorithmically guided descent into a polarized reality where the other is no longer human. Recognizing this process is the first, essential step toward reclaiming a more nuanced and compassionate view of the world and of each other.
In-group homogenization. In our digital journey, we often seek out spaces of comfort, communities of the like-minded where our beliefs are reflected back at us. You scroll through your feed and you see articles, videos, and opinions that resonate. It feels validating, like finding your tribe. But within this comfort lies a subtle yet profound cognitive hack, a process that doesn't just validate your group, but fundamentally reshapes it from within. This is the phenomenon of in-group homogenization. To understand it, we must first distinguish it from its more famous cousin, the outgroup homogeneity effect, which is the tendency to see members of other groups as all being the same, while viewing our own group as a collection of diverse individuals. In-group homogenization is the inverse and in many ways more insidious process. It is the gradual erosion of diversity within our own group, a slow, algorithmically guided convergence towards a singular, unified viewpoint. It's the process by which a choir of distinct voices learns to sing the exact same note in the exact same way until the harmony is lost to unison. This isn't an entirely new phenomenon. Its roots lie deep in our social psychology. Thinkers like Henry Tujfel and John Turner, with their social identity theory, explain that we derive a significant part of our self-esteem from our group memberships. To bolster our group, and by extension ourselves, we have a natural inclination to emphasize shared beliefs and minimize internal disagreements. This creates a powerful pressure to conform, a dynamic Irving Janis famously labeled groupthink, where the desire for consensus overrides a realistic appraisal of alternatives. For most of human history, this process was slow, checked by the friction of face-to-face interaction and exposure to different real-world communities. The catalyst for its modern acceleration is, of course, the algorithm. The digital platforms we inhabit are not neutral town squares. They are meticulously curated ecosystems designed for one primary goal: engagement. And nothing is more engaging than reinforcement. Here is how the mechanism hacks our perception. First, the algorithm identifies your in-group based on your clicks, your likes, your shares, and the time you spend on content. It sees you're interested in, say, sustainable living, or vintage film, or a particular political ideology. It then begins to build what we call a filter bubble around you. But it does more than just filter out opposing views. It actively curates the internal conversation of your group.
Content that perfectly aligns with the most dominant, most engaging, and often most extreme version of the group's identity is amplified. A nuanced or questioning take from within the sustainable living community might receive minimal engagement. But a declarative, passionate post that reinforces the core dogma will be rewarded with likes and shares. The algorithm sees this engagement and pushes that content to the forefront, not just for you, but for everyone else in the digital in-group. This creates a powerful feedback loop. Members see the most uniform and passionate ideas being celebrated, creating a form of social proof. They begin to subconsciously adjust their own expressions to match what is being rewarded. Dissenting or moderate voices within the group are not necessarily censored, but they are algorithmically deprioritized. They're quietly starved of oxygen while the most homogeneous content thrives. Over time, the acceptable range of opinion within the group narrows. The group doesn't just seem more uniform, it actively becomes more uniform. The applications of this are everywhere. We see it in political polarization, where nuanced center-left or center-right positions are sanded down into rigid, uncompromising dogma. We see it in online fandoms, where a specific interpretation of a character or story becomes the only acceptable truth, and those who disagree are pushed out. We see it in wellness communities, where a popular trend can quickly become an unshakable and unquestioned tenet of health. The ultimate hack of in-group homogenization is not just that it changes what we think about others, but that it fundamentally constricts the way we are allowed to think within the very communities we turn to for a sense of belonging. The algorithm, in its quest to give us what we want, slowly transforms our diverse tribes into monolithic entities, robbing them of the very internal debate and diversity of thought that allows a group to grow, adapt, and remain healthy. It offers us the comfort of an echo at the cost of the conversations we truly need to have.
It then predicts that in this slightly vulnerable state, You are 30% more likely to click on an ad for a dating app, or perhaps a self-improvement course. It might notice that you respond positively to social proof, so it will strategically place a news article in your feed that has been liked by 3 of your most respected friends, priming you to agree with its premise before you've even read the headline. Finally, there is the feedback loop. Your reaction to each nudge, the click, the purchase, the comment, or even the decision to ignore it, is fed back into the system. The model of you is updated, refined. The next nudge is more precise, more effective. The process is relentless, optimizing itself with every interaction. The applications are everywhere. In commerce, it's about moving beyond selling you a product you want to manufacturing the want itself. In media, it's about curating your informational reality to guide you toward a particular worldview, one story at a time. In politics, it can be used to suppress voter turnout by showing discouraging news to a specific demographic, or to galvanize another group by feeding them a steady diet of outrage. The true power of predictive behavior shaping lies in its invisibility. Because each nudge is so small, so tailored to our own psychological profile, it doesn't feel like coercion. It feels like our own idea. It feels like free will. We believe we discovered that new song, stumbled upon that fascinating article, or formed that political opinion all on our own. The algorithm has simply and silently paved the path and whispered the directions. We have moved from a world where technology predicts our future to one where it actively writes it. And the most effective puppet, after all, is the one who does not know he's on a string.
Choice overload and decision fatigue. Consider, for a moment, the last time you opened a streaming service, intending to watch just one episode of something before bed. You were presented with an endless scrolling tapestry of possibility. Critically acclaimed dramas, obscure foreign films, reality shows, documentaries. 10 minutes pass, then 20. You find yourself paralyzed, scrolling past dozens of perfectly good options, feeling a strange sense of anxiety. You might even close the app and watch nothing at all. This modern paralysis is not a personal failing. It is a well-documented psychological phenomenon, and it is one of the most fundamental vulnerabilities that algorithms are designed to exploit. We are talking about the twin concepts of choice overload and its inevitable consequence, decision fatigue. The idea that more choice is not always better was famously demonstrated in the late 1990s by psychologists Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper. In their now classic JAM study, they set up a tasting booth in a gourmet food store. On one day, they offered an extensive selection of 24 different jams. On another, they offered a curated selection of just 6. The results were startling. While the larger display attracted more onlookers, the small display was overwhelmingly more effective at generating sales. In fact, shoppers who saw the limited selection were 10 times more likely to actually purchase a jar of jam. This experiment beautifully illustrates the concept of choice overload. When faced with an overwhelming number of options, our brain struggles. The cognitive load required to evaluate each choice, weigh its pros and cons, and compare it to every other possibility becomes too great. Instead of feeling empowered, we feel overwhelmed. This leads to what is often called analysis paralysis, where the fear of making the wrong choice becomes so significant that we choose to make no choice at all. This brings us to the core mechanism at play, decision fatigue. Think of your capacity for making rational, considered decisions as a finite resource, much like a muscle's strength or a battery's charge. Every single choice you make throughout the day, from what to wear, to what to eat for breakfast, to which email to answer first, depletes this resource. As the day wears on and you make hundreds of small decisions, your cognitive energy wanes. This state of cognitive exhaustion is what psychologists term decision fatigue. When it sets in, our ability to exercise self-control and make thoughtful judgments plummets. We begin to seek shortcuts. We become more impulsive, more likely to procrastinate, and more susceptible to simply choosing the easiest or default option presented to us. Now, let us place this human frailty into the digital landscape. Algorithms are not just code, they are architects of choice. Platforms like Amazon, Netflix, and Spotify understand this psychology implicitly. They present you with the illusion of an infinite library,
the overwhelming catalog of 24 jams to convey value and possibility, but they know that if they left you there, you would drown. So the algorithm steps in as a benevolent guide. It curates a small, manageable selection just for you. The top 10 in your country, the Because You Watched row, the Discover Weekly playlist. These are the 6 jars of jam presented to you after your decision-making muscle is already tired. The algorithm doesn't just solve the problem of choice overload, it leverages your resulting decision fatigue. It offers you the path of least cognitive resistance. You don't have to think, you just have to click. This is where the hack occurs. The solution the algorithm provides is not a neutral one. It is engineered to serve the platform's goals, to keep you engaged longer, to guide you toward content with higher profit margins, or to expose you to a product a partner has paid to promote. On endless scroll platforms like TikTok or Instagram Reels, this is taken to its logical extreme. There is no choice to be made at all. The algorithm makes 100% of the decisions, serving you a perfectly tailored stream of content that exploits your depleted willpower, ensuring you remain a passive, captive audience.
The decoy effect. Imagine this. You're at the cinema, drawn in by the warm, buttery aroma of popcorn. You approach the counter and see the options. A small popcorn is $3. A large popcorn is $7. You pause, weighing the choices. The $3 small seems reasonable, but the $7 large feels like a bit of an indulgence. Your brain begins a quiet internal calculation of value versus desire. But then you notice a third option you had initially overlooked, a medium popcorn for $6.50. Suddenly, the decision becomes effortless. The medium is clearly a terrible deal, only 50 cents less than the large. In an instant, the $7 large transforms from an indulgence into a fantastic bargain. You confidently order the large, feeling like you've made a savvy choice. You have just been influenced by one of the most elegant and effective tools of perceptual manipulation, the decoy effect. This phenomenon, also known as the asymmetrical dominance effect, is a cognitive bias where individuals tend to have a specific change in preference between two options when a third asymmetrically dominated option is also presented. That is a rather clinical definition, so let's break it down. The decoy, in our example, the medium popcorn, is not designed to be chosen. Its true purpose is to be a silent persuader. It is strategically priced and positioned to make one of the other options, the target, seem overwhelmingly superior. It does this by creating a simple, immediate point of comparison that frames the target as the most logical, value-driven choice. To understand why this works, we must look at the architecture of human decision-making. Our brains are not precision calculators, assessing the absolute value of every option in a vacuum. Instead, we are masters of relative comparison. We find it difficult to determine the inherent value of a $7 popcorn. Is it worth it? The answer is complex. But we find it incredibly easy to see that $7 for a large is a much better deal than $6.50 for a medium. The decoy provides a convenient shortcut, a mental heuristic that relieves us of the cognitive load of a more difficult value judgment. It gives us a reason, a justification for our choice. We aren't just buying the big one, we are avoiding the bad deal. This principle was first formally documented in the early 1980s by researchers Joel Huber, John Payne, and Christopher Puto.
Through a series of experiments involving choices between things like restaurants, cars, and even political candidates, they demonstrated that the introduction of a carefully crafted third option could predictably steer subjects toward a predetermined target choice, effectively hacking their rational decision-making process. And in our modern, algorithmically driven world, the decoy effect has been supercharged. It is no longer confined to static menus at a cinema. It is a dynamic, personalized tool used to shape your perception and guide your behavior online. Consider software subscriptions. You'll often see a basic plan, a pro plan, and a premium plan. For Frequently, the basic plan is intentionally limited, and the Pro plan is priced just slightly less than the Premium plan, but with significantly fewer features. The Pro plan is the decoy, engineered to make the Premium plan look like an obvious, high-value upgrade. E-commerce platforms deploy this with algorithmic precision. When you search for a product, the system doesn't just show you what you asked for, it curates a choice set. It might show you the television you're considering, the target, and alongside it, a slightly inferior model for only a fraction less, the decoy, and a much more expensive model. The algorithm has constructed a reality where the target option is framed not just as a good choice, but as the smart choice. It has created the context for your decision, nudging you along a path that serves its own objectives. The decoy effect reveals a fundamental truth about our minds. Context is not just part of the decision, it is the decision. Our perception of value is not fixed, it is malleable, and it is being actively shaped. By understanding the mechanics of this subtle persuasion, we can begin to see the invisible architecture of choice that surrounds us every day and perhaps reclaim a small measure of control over the decisions we believe are entirely our own.
Gamification of belief. In our exploration of the algorithmic manipulation of perception, we now turn to one of the most subtle and perhaps most powerful mechanisms at play, the gamification of belief. Have you ever felt a small, satisfying thrill when your post is shared? A sense of validation when you receive a like for expressing a particular viewpoint? This feeling is not an accident. It is the deliberate application of game design principles to the very architecture of our convictions. At its core, gamification is the process of taking elements from game playing, points, competition, rules of play, and applying them to other areas of activity. Traditionally, this has been used in marketing for customer loyalty or in education to increase student engagement. But when algorithms apply this framework to the formation of belief systems, the consequences become profound. This is not an entirely new phenomenon. Human societies have long used game-like structures to encourage group cohesion and adherence to a shared worldview. Think of religious systems with levels of enlightenment, karmic scores, or rituals that grant status. Consider military hierarchies with their stripes and medals, or even scouting organizations with their merit badges. These are all analog forms of gamification, providing tangible rewards and visible progress for conforming to a set of beliefs and behaviors. What has changed, however, is the scale, speed, and personalization of this process, all supercharged by algorithms. The modern digital landscape is the perfect arena for this new game. Your ideology is no longer just a set of ideas, it is a character you are building, and you are constantly being given opportunities to level up. Let us examine the mechanism. It begins with a simple feedback loop. You express an opinion that aligns with a certain group. The algorithm detects this. It then serves you content that reinforces this opinion, and more importantly, it shows you the positive social feedback, the likes, the shares, the affirming comments from others in that group. This is your first reward, a small hit of dopamine. You have earned points. Soon, you are presented with quests. A quest might be to debunk an article from an opposing viewpoint, to share a particular meme, or to join a specific group or forum. Completing these quests earns you more points in the form of social validation and a deeper sense of belonging. You begin to unlock achievements, not as digital badges, but as signifiers of identity. You are no longer just a person with an opinion. You are a patriot, a social justice warrior, a free thinker, a red-pilled initiate. These labels are the badges that signal your rank within the ideological game.
Leaderboards are established, not explicitly, but through visibility and influence. Those who are most fervent, who post the most, who argue the most effectively according to the group's rules, are rewarded with more followers, more reach. They become the high-level players, and the algorithm promotes their content, showing newcomers what it takes to win. This creates a powerful in-group dynamic.
Your team is on a noble mission, and every other belief system is a competing team. The algorithm, acting as the impartial game master, ensures you primarily see the weakest arguments and most extreme members of the opposition, making them easy to defeat. Each win in an online debate, each dismissive comment you post, feels like capturing a flag or scoring a point for your side. The ultimate danger of this gamified reality is that it shifts the goal from understanding truth to winning the game. Beliefs are no longer things to be carefully examined and updated with new evidence. They are the uniform of your chosen team. To question a belief is not an act of intellectual curiosity, but an act of betrayal. It is to risk losing all the points you have accumulated, to be cast out of the group, and to lose the very identity you have spent so long constructing. And so, without ever even consciously choosing to play, we find ourselves as characters in the 1,000 different invisible games, each one meticulously designed by an algorithm whose only goal is to keep us playing. Our perception is not just being influenced, it is being scored, ranked, and rewarded, one belief at a time. Body image warping. Of all the landscapes we navigate in our lives, perhaps the most intimate and treacherous is the one we see in the mirror. For millennia, this reflection was a private conversation between ourselves and our own psyche, influenced by culture, art, and the people immediately around us. But in the digital age, a third party has entered this conversation, an invisible architect that is subtly and perpetually warping our reflection. This is the hack of algorithmic body image. To understand the depth of this hack, we must first appreciate its historical precedent. For much of the 20th century, body image was shaped by broadcast media, the curated one-to-many monologue of magazines, television, and film. These platforms presented a narrow, often unattainable ideal of beauty. Yet there was a crucial limitation. The medium was finite. You could close the magazine. You could turn off the television. The source of the ideal was external, and you could, with effort, step away from it. The algorithm has transformed this monologue into an intimate, unending dialogue. It doesn't just broadcast an ideal, it listens to your insecurities and tailors a reality specifically designed to amplify them. The mechanism is simple and insidious. Every action you take on a social platform is a data point. The images you pause on for a fraction of a second longer, the fitness accounts you follow, the cosmetic procedures you search, the filters you try on, all of it is recorded. The algorithm is not programmed with a concept of beauty, but with a prime directive: maximize engagement. And it is learned, through trillions of interactions, that nothing is more engaging than our own perceived flaws. It begins to construct a bespoke reality for you, a gallery curated from your own subconscious vulnerabilities. If you linger on images of impossibly flat stomachs, your feed becomes a cascade of them. If you show interest in achieving a certain jawline, you'll be served an endless stream of tutorials, advertisements for sculpting tools, and testimonials from cosmetic surgeons. This creates a feedback loop. The algorithm presents an impossible standard. Your engagement with it signals an insecurity. The algorithm then doubles down, serving you more of that standard alongside the solutions to achieve it. You are, in effect, trapped in a filter bubble of your own perceived imperfection. But the hack goes deeper. The algorithm isn't just showing you images of real, albeit genetically gifted, people. It is increasingly populating our feeds with a new kind of human, the algorithmically perfected human. These are faces and bodies smoothed by filters, sculpted by editing apps, and in some cases, generated entirely by artificial intelligence. They possess a poreless, luminous skin quality that doesn't exist in nature. Their features are honed to a degree of symmetry that is mathematically perfect, but biologically impossible. This perpetual stream of curated perfection recalibrates our baseline for what is normal, what is beautiful, and what is flawed. The natural texture of human skin, the slight asymmetry of a smile, the way a body creases when it moves, these are no longer seen as normal variations, but as defects to be corrected. The consequences of this digital dysmorphia are profound. Psychologists now speak of Snapchat dysmorphia,
a phenomenon where individuals seek cosmetic surgery not to look like a particular celebrity, but to look like their own filtered selfies. The warped digital reflection has become more real, more desirable than the physical self. The algorithm, in its relentless quest for engagement, has successfully hacked our most fundamental perception, the perception of who we are. It has taken our private conversation in the mirror and turned it into a public marketplace where our insecurities are the currency, and the product being sold is an ever-receding, digitally generated mirage of perfection. The war for a healthy body image is no longer just an internal struggle. It is a battle against a personalized learning system designed to convince you that you are never, ever enough.
Credibility by association. Welcome. In our exploration of the myriad ways algorithms shape our reality, we now turn to a phenomenon that is as old as human society, yet has been weaponized with unprecedented precision in the digital age. It is a subtle, almost invisible force that governs who and what we trust. We call it credibility by association. Consider for a moment your digital information stream. You scroll past an article shared by a university professor you admire, a video recommended by a scientist whose work you respect, or a product endorsed by an influencer whose lifestyle you find appealing. Do you stop to meticulously vet the claims in that article, the data in that video, or the quality of that product? Often, the answer is no. You afford it a measure of trust, not based on its own intrinsic merit, but on the merit of the person or institution associated with it. This cognitive shortcut, this mental heuristic, is credibility by association. It operates on a simple yet powerful principle of transference. Our brains, in an effort to conserve energy, are constantly seeking proxies for truth. Fully investigating every piece of information we encounter is computationally expensive. It would lead to a state of perpetual analysis paralysis. So instead, we outsource the vetting process. We transfer the credibility we've already established for a trusted source, a person, a brand, an institution, onto a new, unfamiliar piece of information that is linked to it. The trust acts like a halo, illuminating everything it touches. Historically, this was a cornerstone of society. A craftsman's reputation was built on his apprenticeship with a known master. A scholar's ideas gained traction if they were published in a respected journal. A politician sought the endorsement of a beloved community elder. These were analog, human-scale associations that helped us navigate a complex world. But the algorithm has changed the scale and the nature of this game entirely. It doesn't need to create new biases within you. It simply identifies and exploits the ones that are already there. The algorithm is the ultimate, tireless matchmaker of association. Here's how the hack works. First, the system observes who you trust. It logs every like you give to a Nobel laureate, every follow you grant to a reputable news organization, every positive comment you leave on a video by a trusted expert. It builds a detailed map of your personal constellation of credibility. Then, the manipulation begins. The algorithm will start to introduce new information into your feed that is adjacent to your trusted sources.
It might place an article from a highly partisan, unverified blog directly after an article from a well-regarded international newspaper. On the surface of your screen, they appear as equals. The credibility of the platform and the lingering trust from the previous legitimate article can bleed over, giving the new information an unearned sheen of legitimacy. The second, more direct application is in recommendation. An algorithm might notice that people who follow a particular astrophysicist also tend to engage with content from
a charismatic but pseudoscientific futurologist. It will then serve you content from the latter, not because it is factually sound, but because the social graph, the network of associations, suggests you are a prime target. Your brain, seeing this news source in a context usually reserved for credible figures, may lower its intellectual defenses. Finally, and perhaps most pervasively, this is the engine of the entire influencer economy. An algorithm identifies an individual you find authentic and trustworthy. A brand then pays that individual to associate their product with that trust. The algorithm ensures this sponsored association appears seamlessly in your feed. The hack is that the connection feels personal and organic, a recommendation from a friend, when in fact it is a calculated, data-driven transaction designed to transfer personal trust into commercial gain. The danger of this algorithmic amplification is that our critical thinking is bypassed. We stop evaluating the message and instead react to the messenger, or even just the messenger's perceived proximity to other messengers we trust. Our own cognitive efficiency is turned against us, making us vulnerable to everything from subtle commercial persuasion to dangerous misinformation, all because it was presented to us under the borrowed light of a trusted source. The hack isn't that you're being lied to directly, it's that you're being encouraged to trust without question. And in that unexamined trust, our perception is quietly and profoundly reshaped.
Normalization of surveillance. Let us consider a quiet, almost imperceptible shift in the landscape of our lives. It is a change not of geography, but of expectation. There was a time, not so long ago, when the idea of a private conversation being recorded in your living room or your daily movements being mapped and stored by an unseen entity would have been the premise of a dystopian novel. Today, for many, it is simply the price of convenience. This slow, steady acceptance is what we call the normalization of surveillance. And it is one of the most profound ways our perception is being algorithmically re-engineered. This process did not happen overnight, through force or decree. It happened through a series of carefully designed, incredibly appealing invitations. The algorithm, in its endless quest for data to optimize its predictions, learned a fundamental truth about human nature. We will trade a measure of privacy for a tangible benefit. The hack, then, is not to steal our data, but to make us offer it up willingly, even enthusiastically. It begins with utility. A map application asks for your location data, not to track you, but to offer you the fastest route home, to warn you of traffic, to help you find a nearby cafe. The trade is logical and immediately rewarding. A smart speaker asks to listen, not to eavesdrop, but to play your favorite song on command, to set a timer while you cook, or to answer a child's fleeting question. The benefit is immediate, the cost abstract. Each transaction is a small, seemingly insignificant step, but algorithms have perfect memory. These steps accumulate, building a mosaic of your life, your habits, your relationships, your preferences, your vulnerabilities that is more detailed than you yourself could likely recall. The mechanism of this normalization is layered with sophisticated psychological principles, all mediated by code. The user interface is designed to be frictionless. Sharing your location is a single tap. Uploading your photos, complete with metadata, is seamless. The language used is deliberately reassuring. We are not being tracked, our experience is being personalized. It's not surveillance, it's community safety. This reframing is a crucial part of the perceptual hack. It anesthetizes our old instincts for privacy, replacing them with a modern desire for optimization and connection. Then there is the powerful force of social proof. When we see our friends and family checking in at restaurants, sharing their vacation photos in real time, or using apps that track their fitness runs through public streets, the act of withholding our own data begins to feel abnormal, even antisocial.
The algorithm amplifies this by design, rewarding public sharing with likes, comments, and increased visibility, creating a feedback loop where surveillance becomes a form of social capital. We are not just being watched by a corporation, We are performing for each other under the watchful eye of the algorithm that judges our performance. The result is a profound shift in our societal baseline. The camera on a doorbell is no longer an intrusion, but a security feature. The targeted advertisement that references a private conversation is not unsettling but merely relevant. We have been conditioned to see the architecture of surveillance as an architecture of service. The very notion of what constitutes private space has been eroded, not by a breaking down of walls, but by our own invitation to let the network in. We have placed the listening device on our own kitchen counter. We carry the tracking device in our own pocket. This is the quiet genius of the hack. It doesn't feel like a violation because we are active participants. We consent, click by click, share by share. But the consent is engineered, the choice architecture tilted heavily in one direction. The long-term consequences are obscured by short-term gains. And so, the abnormal becomes normal. The radical becomes routine. Our perception has not been shattered, but gently, algorithmically, and irrevocably bent toward a new reality, one where being constantly observed is no longer a cause for alarm, but simply the background hum of modern life.
Interruption-driven thinking. Consider for a moment your train of thought. Picture it as a physical train, moving along a track toward a specific destination, a complex idea, a creative insight, a difficult decision. In a state of deep focus, this train moves unimpeded, gaining momentum, each car of logic and association connecting seamlessly to the next. Now imagine that the track is littered with switches, signals, and crossing bells, all designed to divert your train onto a different track for just a moment before sending it back on its way. This is the essence of interruption-driven thinking, a cognitive state that has become the default for the modern mind and one of the most effective tools algorithms use to hack your perception. To understand the gravity of this shift, we must first recall the cognitive architecture it replaced. For centuries, the primary mode of deep thought was linear and monotasked. Reading a book, for instance, was a monolithic activity. You began at the start and proceeded, page by page, immersing yourself in a single, sustained narrative or argument. The environment was, by and large, cognitively quiet. Your train of thought had a clear, uninterrupted track. The interruptions that did occur, a knock at the door, the striking of a clock, were analog, infrequent, and lacked the personalized, psychological hook of their digital successors. The mechanism of interruption-driven thinking is both simple in its design and profound in its neurological impact. It preys upon a primal, evolutionarily honed instinct known as the orienting response. This is our brain's fundamental tendency to immediately shift its attention to a new or unexpected stimulus. For our ancestors, this was a survival tool. The snap of a twig in the forest demanded immediate attention, as it could signal either predator or prey. Today, algorithms have weaponized this instinct. The notification ping, the vibrating buzz in your pocket, the red badge on an icon, these are the digital equivalent of that snapped twig. They are engineered to be irresistible, bypassing your conscious, executive function brain and triggering a reflexive, bottom-up attentional shift. Each time you respond to one of these alerts, your brain receives a small, satisfying surge of the neurotransmitter dopamine. It's a reward for engaging. The notification might be trivial, a like on a photo, an irrelevant news headline, but the reward pathway is activated all the same. Because these rewards are delivered on a variable schedule, much like a slot machine, they become exceptionally compelling. You never know which notification will be important or gratifying, so you are conditioned to check them all.
Here is the true cost, the subtle hack on your perception. Every interruption, no matter how brief, incurs the significant cognitive cost. Researchers call it a context switch. When your train of thought is diverted, it doesn't simply reappear on the main track, full speed ahead. It has to slow down, reorient itself, and expend considerable mental energy to regain its previous momentum. Studies have shown it can take upwards of 20 minutes to return to a state of deep focus after even a minor interruption.
Now, multiply that cost by the dozens, or even hundreds, of algorithmically timed interruptions you experience each day. The result is a profound rewiring of our cognitive habits. We are being trained away from the deep, linear thought required for complex problem solving and creativity, and conditioned into a state of perpetual, shallow alertness. Our thinking becomes fragmented, our attention spans shorten, and we begin to feel a low-grade anxiety or restlessness during periods of quiet. We develop a fear of missing out on the next digital stimulus. Our perception of the world itself begins to mirror the structure of a social media feed, a series of disconnected, ephemeral moments, rather than a coherent, developing narrative. Algorithms don't just want your attention, they want to fundamentally reshape the very way you think, transforming your mind into a system that is constantly waiting and ready to be interrupted.
Price discrimination. Have you ever felt a sense of urgency while booking a flight online? You search for a fare, hesitate for a moment, and when you return, the price has mysteriously climbed. Or perhaps you've recommended a product to a friend, only to discover they were shown a completely different price on the very same website. You are not imagining things. This is not a glitch in the system. This is the system, working exactly as intended. It is a sophisticated, algorithmically driven practice known as price discrimination, and it is one of the most powerful ways your perception of value is being subtly manipulated every day. At its core, price discrimination is a simple economic concept, charging different customers different prices for the exact same product or service. In its earliest forms, it was transparent and relatively benign. Think of a movie theater offering discounted tickets for students or senior citizens. The theater segments its market into broad, easily identifiable groups, assuming that students and seniors have less disposable income and are more sensitive to price. By offering a lower price, they attract customers who otherwise might not have come without lowering the price for everyone. This is known as third-degree price discrimination, dividing customers into distinct groups. For decades, this was the limit of the practice. Segmentation was based on observable demographic data: age, student status, location, or perhaps volume, like a bulk discount. The digital revolution, however, has transformed this blunt instrument into a surgical scalpel. Algorithms have enabled a far more granular and opaque form of this practice, often called first-degree or personalized pricing. This is the attempt to charge every single customer the maximum price they are individually willing to pay. How is this possible? It begins with the vast troves of data you generate with every click, search, and scroll. Algorithms create a detailed economic fingerprint for you, a profile of your purchasing power and habits. They analyze your browsing history to see what kinds of products you look at. Have you been eyeing luxury brands or clearance items? They know your location via your IP address, inferring your wealth based on your zip code. They even log the device you're using. It has been shown, for instance, that some e-commerce sites have historically displayed higher prices to users browsing on Apple devices, operating on the assumption that a Mac user can and will pay more. This digital dossier allows an algorithm to make a highly educated guess about what economists call your reservation price, the absolute ceiling of what you would be willing to spend. Let's return to that airline ticket.
The algorithm doesn't just see a person looking for a flight from New York to London, it sees your search history, noting that you've checked this same flight multiple times in 1 week, signaling high intent and perhaps a degree of urgency. It might register that you're booking a last-minute flight for a weekday, suggesting a business trip, where price is less of a concern than for a planned family vacation. It might even factor in the time of day or the battery level of your phone, hypothesizing that a person with a dying battery late at night is more likely to make an impulsive, higher-price purchase. Based on this mosaic of data points, the pricing engine renders a decision in milliseconds. The price you are shown is not a universal fact. It is a personalized suggestion, a number calculated to be just low enough to secure your purchase, but not a penny lower. The hack on your perception is profound. You believe you are responding to objective market conditions, to supply and demand.
In reality, you are engaged in a one-sided negotiation with a machine that knows more about your own economic behavior than you do. It exploits your cognitive biases, creating artificial scarcity with messages like, only 2 seats left at this price, and anchoring your perception of value to a number that was generated just for you. This fractures our shared sense of economic reality. The price tag, once a symbol of objective value in an open market, is becoming a reflection in a digital hall of mirrors, showing us only what the algorithm believes we are prepared to see. The ultimate question the system asks is no longer, what is this product worth? Instead, it is, what is this product worth to you?
Semantic saturation. Let us begin with a simple, private experiment. Choose a word. Any word will do, but a common one works best. Let's use the word door. Now say it aloud. Door. It has a clear meaning, a function, an image associated with it. Now say it again, and again, and again. Door, 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 door. Continue this for about 30 seconds. A strange thing begins to happen, doesn't it? The crisp, solid meaning of the word begins to fray at the edges. The connection between the sound you are making and the concept of a hinged barrier in a wall starts to feel arbitrary. The word disintegrates into a mere collection of phonemes, a strange and unfamiliar mouth sound. It becomes hollow. This peculiar sensation has a name: semantic saturation. It is our next stop on this tour of the mind's vulnerabilities. The term itself sounds academic, but the experience is universal. Semantic refers to meaning in language, and saturation means to be filled to excess, to be oversupplied. Semantic saturation, therefore, is the experience of a word or phrase temporarily losing its meaning for an individual after it has been repeated in quick succession. The phenomenon was first described and named in the 1962 doctoral dissertation of Leon Jakubowicz James at McGill University. He called it a form of cortical fatigue. His experiments were elegant in their simplicity. Participants would repeat a word and then perform a task related to that word's meaning, like grouping it with other related concepts. He found that after rapid repetition, their ability to perform the semantic task was significantly impaired. The word had become, for a short time, just noise. To understand why this happens, we must picture the process of comprehension in the brain. When you hear or read the word door, a specific neural circuit is activated. This circuit connects the perceptual input, the sound of the word, to the vast interconnected network of concepts that constitute its meaning: wood, handle, hinges, opening, closing, house, room. This firing is quick and efficient. However, repeated, rapid firing of the same specific circuit causes the neurons to become refractory. It's a form of neural adaptation. The central nervous system, in essence, begins to treat the repeated, unchanging stimulus as unimportant background noise, and the response in the semantic processing areas of the brain is actively inhibited. The pathway from sound to meaning becomes temporarily blocked, like a trail that has been walked so many times in a single minute that the grass itself is crushed and the path becomes indistinct. But here is where this seemingly benign psychological quirk transforms from a parlor trick into a powerful tool for hacking perception.
In the digital ecosystem, the algorithm is the ultimate engine of repetition. Consider the life cycle of a political slogan, or a corporate buzzword, or a viral news headline. At first, a phrase like unprecedented times or fake news carries immense weight. It has a powerful, specific, and often emotional meaning. It triggers a strong cognitive and emotional response. The algorithm, however, in its relentless pursuit of engagement, identifies this powerful phrase and begins to repeat it. It appears in your newsfeed, in sponsored content, in auto-generated headlines, in the mouths of 1,000 different commentators, repeated ad nauseum. Your brain, exposed to this massive, repetitive stimulus, does exactly what it is designed to do. It begins to protect itself through semantic satiation. The phrase is no longer a potent signifier of a complex idea. It becomes a hollowed-out token.
The emotional charge dissipates. The critical thought it once provoked is replaced by a vague sense of familiarity and fatigue. It becomes just noise. This is not persuasion. It is a far more insidious form of manipulation. It is perceptual numbness, achieved through brute force repetition. An algorithm doesn't need to convince you that a terrifying concept isn't scary. It simply needs to repeat the word for terror until it loses its meaning. It doesn't need to argue against a call for justice. It simply needs to saturate your information channels with the word justice until it feels as empty as the word door after you've repeated it 50 times in a row. The most potent words in our language are thus defanged, neutralized not by argument, but by overexposure. The system hacks your perception by exploiting your brain's own self-defense mechanism, turning a tool for filtering out monotony into a weapon that dulls your ability to recognize meaning itself. Erosion of ambiguity tolerance. Consider the last time you were faced with a complex question, one without a clear, immediate answer. Did you feel a sense of curiosity, a desire to explore the nuances? Or did you feel a subtle rising tide of impatience, an urge to find a definitive, black and white summary? This feeling, this growing discomfort with the gray areas of life, is a symptom of a deeply consequential hack on our perception, the erosion of ambiguity tolerance. Ambiguity tolerance is a psychological term for the capacity to perceive ambiguous situations as desirable, or at the very least, to confront them without stress or discomfort. It is the cognitive muscle that allows us to hold two opposing ideas in our mind at the same time, to appreciate nuance, and to navigate the inherent uncertainties of the world. Historically, this trait has been linked to creativity, to resilience, and to sophisticated problem solving. It is the mindset of the scientist who dwells in the unknown, the artist who explores contradiction, and the diplomat who navigates complex human interests. In a pre-digital world, ambiguity was an unavoidable feature of our information landscape. To understand a topic, one might consult an encyclopedia, which provided a stable but limited overview. You might then go to a library, sifting through books with differing perspectives, encountering dead ends, and slowly synthesizing a complex, multifaceted understanding. Information gathering was a process defined by friction, and this friction naturally cultivated a tolerance for the unresolved. Enter the algorithm. The foundational goal of nearly every major platform algorithm is not to foster understanding, but to maximize engagement. And what is one of the most effective ways to secure engagement? By eliminating friction and providing the dopamine rush of certainty. The mechanism is multifaceted. First, there is the illusion of the immediate definitive answer. When you type a complex question into a search engine, you are often presented with a featured snippet, a single authoritative-looking block of text pulled from a web page. The system doesn't present you with a reading list of conflicting sources, it presents an answer. This trains our brains to expect and prefer simple package resolutions over the messy process of inquiry. Second, the very architecture of our digital spaces is built on binary, unambiguous feedback. The like or the dislike, the upvote or the downvote, the share or the ignore. We are constantly prompted to render immediate, simple judgments on complex pieces of information. This creates a cognitive habit of sorting the world into dichotomies, good or bad, right or wrong, with us or against us. Nuance receives no clicks.
A comment that says, "Well, it's complicated and both sides have valid points," is algorithmically invisible compared to one that sparks outrage and debate. Third, and perhaps most insidiously, is the feedback loop of personalization. As algorithms learn our preferences, they begin to construct a reality tailored to our existing beliefs. This is the much-discussed echo chamber. We are steadily shielded from information that contradicts our worldview, information that would naturally introduce ambiguity and challenge our assumptions. Over time, our epistemological world shrinks. We are no longer simply people who hold a certain belief, we become people for whom the opposing belief is not just wrong, but fundamentally incomprehensible. The algorithm has made the other not just disagreeable, but alien. The application of this erosion is visible all around us.
It manifests in political polarization, where empathy for an opposing viewpoint is replaced by moral certainty and contempt. It appears in our social discourse, where complex societal problems are reduced to simplistic slogans and viral video takedowns. It even seeps into our personal lives, creating an impatience with the inherent ambiguities of human relationships. We want to label people and situations quickly to resolve the discomfort of not knowing. This is not a conspiracy. It is a consequence of a system optimizing for a single metric. The algorithm is not sentiently trying to make us less thoughtful. It is simply a machine that has learned that the path of least resistance, the path of certainty, of tribal confirmation, of simple emotional response, is the most effective way to keep our eyes on the screen. The erosion of our ambiguity tolerance is a byproduct of this optimization. It is a subtle, persistent hack, not of our devices, but of our very capacity to comprehend a world that is, and always will be, gloriously, maddeningly, and beautifully complex.
There is a unique and deeply human joy in the act of discovery. Think of the feeling of wandering through a secondhand bookshop and having a particular spine, seemingly at random, catch your eye. You pull it from the shelf and its contents speak to a question you didn't even know you were asking. Or the experience of shuffling through vinyl records in a dusty crate and unearthing an artist who will go on to become the soundtrack to a chapter of your life. We call this serendipity, the faculty of making happy and unexpected discoveries by accident. It feels like a small miracle, a moment of grace where the universe conspires to place the perfect thing in your path at the perfect time. It's a cornerstone of how we form our tastes, our hobbies, and even our identities. But what if I told you that this deeply personal, almost magical experience is now being synthesized, that it is being designed, engineered, and delivered to you on a schedule? This is the principle of manufactured serendipity, one of the most subtle and powerful ways algorithms are hacking your perception. It is the conversion of a happy accident into a predictable outcome. The mechanism behind this is both elegant and profoundly complex. It begins, as so many of these processes do, with data. But it's not simply about what you've bought or what you've explicitly liked. The algorithms are watching the ghost signals. They measure the dwell time, how long your cursor hovers over an image before you scroll past. They track the velocity of your scroll, noting when you slow down, intrigued by a headline you don't even click. They analyze the semantic context of the articles you read, the emotional sentiment of the music you listen to, and the visual aesthetics of the accounts you follow. From this ocean of data, a hyper-dimensional model of you is constructed. It's not just a profile of your stated interests, but a predictive map of your latent desires. The system begins to understand the you that you want to be. It knows you've been buying running shoes, but it also infers from your interest in minimalist design and Japanese culture that you might be receptive to the philosophy of slow jogging. You've never searched for it. You don't know it exists. And this is where the manufacturing process truly begins. The algorithm doesn't immediately serve you an ad for a book on slow jogging. That would be too obvious. It would feel like a sales pitch, and the magic would be lost. Instead, it waits. It bides its time looking for the perfect contextual moment. Perhaps a week later, as you're scrolling through a newsfeed, it will surface an article from a respectable publication titled "The Japanese Art of Effortless Running." It doesn't feel like an ad. It feels like a discovery. You click, you read, and you feel that spark, that little thrill of stumbling upon something new and fascinating that seems perfectly tailored to you. You have just experienced a perfectly executed act of manufactured serendipity. We see this architecture of engineered discovery everywhere. Spotify's Discover Weekly playlist is a masterclass. It doesn't just give you more of what you already like, it triangulates your taste. It sees you like 70s folk and modern indie rock with female vocalists,
and it finds the midpoint, a forgotten folk rock artist from 1974 you've never heard of. When her song plays, it feels like a revelation, a secret shared just with you. The TikTok For You page is perhaps the most potent example in existence. It actively ignores your social graph to build a direct, unmediated pipeline to your dopamine system, feeding you an endless stream of videos that you feel you've discovered, each one a perfect fleeting moment of serendipitous delight. The consequence of this is a subtle but fundamental shift in our relationship with the world. We are made to feel like active explorers, charting our own unique course through the vast digital landscape. But in reality, we are often tourists on a meticulously planned guided tour. The path is predetermined, designed to lead us toward commercially viable destinations. It creates the illusion of expanding our horizons, while in fact placing us in ever more refined and comfortable filter bubbles. The truly strange, the challenging, the unmarketable idea, the things one might genuinely discover by accident in that dusty bookshop, are rendered invisible. So the next time you stumble upon that perfect product, that obscure film, or that life-changing article online, it is worth pausing to appreciate the moment, appreciate the feeling, the spark of joy, but also appreciate the invisible architecture that likely brought it to you. Acknowledge that your moment of personal discovery may have been a carefully calculated probability, a ghost in the machine knowing you, perhaps, a little better than you know yourself and whispering, "Here, I think you'll like this."
Cognitive load maximization. Welcome. Let us consider a feeling you almost certainly know intimately. It's the sensation after an hour spent scrolling through a social media feed or browsing a news aggregator. A feeling not of enlightenment, but of a strange, buzzing exhaustion, a mental fog. You may have consumed hundreds of pieces of information, yet you feel you've learned very little. You might assume this is simply a byproduct of the digital age, an unfortunate side effect. But I invite you to consider a more deliberate possibility, that this state of mental fatigue is not a bug, but a feature. This is the realm of cognitive load maximization. To understand how this concept is used to hack our perception, we must first travel back to its origins, which are, ironically, rooted in the noble pursuit of education. In the 1980s, an educational psychologist named John Sweller developed what he called cognitive load theory. His research was based on a simple, powerful premise. Our working memory, the part of our mind that actively processes information, like a small mental workbench, is severely limited. It can only hold and manipulate a few pieces of information at once. Sweller argued that for effective learning to occur, teaching methods should be designed to minimize the cognitive load on a student. He identified different types of load, but the key was to reduce what he called extraneous load, the unnecessary mental work that distracts from the actual learning objective. The goal was to create clarity, focus, and space for deep understanding. Now, witness the perversion of this benevolent idea in the digital landscape. Where Sweller sought to clear the workbench to build knowledge, algorithmic systems often seek to flood it, to pile on so much extraneous clutter that there is no space left for the construction of critical thought. This is cognitive load maximization. The mechanism is a multi-pronged assault on your finite attentional resources. First is the sheer density of information. A single screen presents you with an auto-playing video, a column of text, flashing advertisements, a pop-up notification for a new message, and an endless scroll of yet more content, waiting just below. Each element is a separate demand on your working memory. Second is the weaponization of task switching. Every hyperlink, every read more button, every recommendation for a new video is an invitation to abandon your current mental task and start a new one. This constant reorienting of your attention is profoundly taxing.
Your mental workbench is perpetually being cleared and reset, but never for long enough to actually build anything meaningful.
Third is sensory overload. Competing audio from different videos, vibrant and often clashing colors, and animations designed to reflexively draw the eye, all of these consume cognitive bandwidth before you've even processed a single sentence of content. And finally, there is decision fatigue. The infinite scroll and the recommendation engine present a paradox of choice on a massive scale. What should you watch next? Which article is most important? Which comment should you reply to? Each of these micro decisions, though seemingly trivial, is a small withdrawal from your finite bank of cognitive energy. The application, the ultimate goal of this maximization, is disarmingly simple. When your cognitive load is at its peak, your capacity for higher order thinking plummets. Your mental workbench is so cluttered with the what that you have no capacity to ask why. You lose the ability to vet sources, to question underlying assumptions, to connect new information with your existing knowledge, or to simply pause and reflect. In this state of overload, the brain defaults to its most primitive shortcuts or heuristics. We become far more susceptible to emotional manipulation over logical reasoning. A sensational headline triggers an immediate emotional response because we lack the cognitive resources to analyze its veracity. We are more likely to engage in impulsive behavior. The angry share, the one-click purchase, the mindless like. Our perception is no longer being actively constructed by us, it is being passively received. The algorithm has hacked our perception not by feeding us one big lie, but by creating an environment where we are too mentally exhausted to distinguish truth from fiction or significance from noise. The fog you feel is not an accident. It is the intended result of a system designed to keep you scrolling, clicking, and consuming without ever truly thinking.
Let us consider the nature of skill. For millennia, our understanding of mastery was grounded in physical reality. We learned by watching the village blacksmith, observing the patient hours of trial and error. We saw the master painter's discarded sketches, the musician's fumbled notes during practice. The process, the struggle, the incremental progress, the humanity of imperfection was as visible as the final product. This provided a natural, properly calibrated benchmark for our own abilities and aspirations. Today, that benchmark is gone. In its place, we have a funhouse mirror, meticulously crafted by algorithms, a phenomenon we will call the skill perception skew. This is the cognitive distortion that occurs when our perception of the difficulty, time, and effort required to achieve a skill is warped by a constant, curated stream of hyper-optimized performance. The mechanism is elegant in its simplicity and profound in its effect. Recommendation algorithms, the engines of our digital feeds, are not designed to show you an accurate representation of reality. They are designed for one primary purpose: to maximize your engagement. And what is more engaging than the illusion of effortless perfection? Consider the guitarist who appears on your screen. You don't see the 10,000 hours of practice, the calloused fingers, the years spent mastering music theory. You see a flawless 60-second performance of an impossibly complex solo, edited for maximum impact. Consider the digital artist. You are shown a mesmerizing time-lapse video where a photorealistic portrait emerges from a blank canvas in 30 seconds. You are not shown the hundreds of hours of painstaking work, the countless uses of the undo command, the drafts that were abandoned in frustration. The algorithm learns that this polished, frictionless content is what holds your attention. It therefore amplifies the masters, the prodigies, and the performers who are most skilled at presenting their skill. It actively filters out the messy middle, the vast, unglamorous landscape of practice, failure, and slow, arduous learning where all true skill is actually forged. This creates a dangerous twofold effect on our perception. First, it dramatically lowers our estimation of the effort required. When we see only the peak of the mountain, we grossly underestimate the difficulty of the climb. The skill appears more accessible, more immediate than it truly is. This can lead to what is known as a Dunning-Kruger feedback loop. A novice, inspired by a viral video, might begin learning a new skill with an inflated sense of confidence. When they inevitably confront the true punishing difficulty of the initial learning curve, the dissonance between their expectation and reality is so vast that it leads not to perseverance,
but to immediate discouragement and abandonment. They conclude not that the skill is hard, but that they are uniquely incapable. The second, and perhaps more insidious effect, is on the perception of our own existing abilities. We begin to compare our messy, private reality, our own slow progress, our mistakes, our behind the scenes struggles with the polished, public highlight reels of others. This is an unwinnable comparison. It breeds a pervasive sense of inadequacy, a quiet anxiety that we are perpetually falling short. It fuels imposter syndrome, as even competent individuals feel like frauds because their internal experience of effort doesn't match the external illusion of ease they see everywhere. This algorithmic skew devalues the very concept of process. It hacks our perception into believing that mastery is an event, not a journey. We become consumers of inspiring outcomes rather than participants in meaningful processes. The joy of being a beginner, of clumsy but earnest effort, is eroded by the impossibly high bar set by the curated feed. We're subtly conditioned to seek the hack, the shortcut, the 5-minute trick to mastery because the algorithm has hidden the truth that there are no shortcuts. There is only the work, and the work is long and it is slow, and it is the most human part of the entire endeavor. Your perception is being guided away from this fundamental reality toward a beautiful, engaging, and utterly demoralizing lie.
Deepfake normalization. Of all the algorithmic levers used to manipulate our perception, few are as profound or as unsettling as the deepfake. But the true hack is not the technology itself. It is the slow, creeping normalization of its presence in our lives. It is the process by which our senses are being taught to accept the synthetic as authentic, eroding the very foundation of trust we place in recorded reality. To understand this normalization, we must first understand the mechanism. The term deepfake is a portmanteau of deep learning and fake. At its core is an elegant yet adversarial process. Imagine two artificial intelligences locked in a duel. One, the generator, is like a master art forger, tasked with creating a fake image or video, say, placing a politician's face onto another person's body. The other AI, the discriminator, is the expert art critic, trained to detect even the slightest imperfection, the smallest sign of forgery. The forger creates a fake, and the critic tells it why it failed. The forger tries again, learning from its mistakes. This cycle repeats millions of times, with the forger getting progressively, exponentially better at lying, until its creations are so perfect that the expert critic can no longer tell the difference between the forgery and the real thing. This is the engine that powers the deepfake, an engine of perfected deception. This technology began its public life in the darker corners of the internet, used for malicious ends. And, in a strange way, this initial shock prepared the ground for its normalization. We were flooded with news reports, ethical debates, and dire warnings about a future of political chaos and weaponized disinformation. This constant exposure, paradoxically, began to dull our senses. The monster, having been described so many times, became a familiar character in our mental landscape, its appearance in the wild less a shock and more a grim, expected milestone. But the most effective vector for normalization is not fear, it is fun. It is entertainment. The same underlying technology that can fabricate a declaration of war is used to power the whimsical face swap filter on your social media app. It's used to create parody videos of celebrities singing absurd songs, which we share and laugh at. In blockbuster films, it is celebrated as a marvel of special effects, de-aging actors to their youthful prime or inserting them seamlessly into historical footage. Each of these benign applications serves as an inoculation. It domesticates the technology, framing it as a creative tool, a source of amusement, a novelty. We become comfortable with the sight of a digitally manipulated face because we interact with it daily in low-stakes, entertaining contexts. This is the hack. The algorithm's influence is not just in creating the fake, but in conditioning us, the audience, to lower our guard. We are being trained, slowly and methodically, to question the very concept of immutable video evidence. This leads to a dangerous epistemological state known as the liar's dividend. In a world where anything can be faked, the powerful can dismiss anything that is real.
A genuine, damning recording of a corrupt official can be waved away with a simple, plausible defense. It's a deepfake. The normalization of the technology provides cover for reality itself to be denied. Our perception is being rewired, not just by a single shocking event, but by 1,000 tiny, entertaining, and seemingly harmless cuts. We are moving from a society that instinctively believes what it sees to one that must actively and laboriously decide what to believe. The algorithm isn't just faking videos, it is hacking our foundational trust in the evidence of our own senses, forcing us to become perpetual detectives in a world where the line between the real and the rendered has been irrevocably blurred.
Quantified self-obsession. In the quiet moments of the morning, before the day has truly begun, millions of us perform a modern ritual. We glance not at the sun, but at a luminous screen on our wrists or beside our bed. There, a tapestry of data awaits, sleep cycles graphed in neat waves, a readiness score presented as a single, authoritative number, heart rate variability plotted with clinical precision. This is the world of the quantified self, a movement that promised us self-knowledge through numbers. But what began as a tool for personal discovery has, for many, morphed into something else entirely, a subtle yet powerful form of perceptual hacking we might call quantified self-obsession. The term quantified self was coined in 2007 by Wired magazine editors Gary Wolfe and Kevin Kelly. Its genesis was in the niche world of biohacking, a community of individuals using technology to gather data about their own bodies and lives in order to make improvements. The motto was simple and noble: self-knowledge through numbers. The underlying philosophy was one of empowerment. By tracking inputs like food and outputs like activity, we could become the scientists of our own existence, running personal experiments to optimize our health, productivity, and happiness. The mechanism through which this ideal has been co-opted by algorithms is a masterclass in behavioral psychology. It begins with ubiquitous data collection. The sensors in our watches, rings, and phones are relentless, capturing thousands of data points every day. But raw data is meaningless to most of us, and so the second layer is applied: gamification. Our lives are translated into a game. We are given rings to close, streaks to maintain, badges to unlock, and leaderboards to climb. This system masterfully exploits our brain's reward pathways, creating dopamine loops that are nearly identical to those found in social media or video games. The desire for the positive feedback of a goal met notification becomes a powerful motivator. Here, however, is where the perceptual hack truly takes hold. The algorithm does not simply present our data, it interprets it for us. It acts as an arbiter of our own internal state. Your device doesn't just say you slept for 6 hours and 47 minutes, it assigns that sleep a score, perhaps a 72 out of 100, and labels it fair. Suddenly, your own subjective feeling of being rested is challenged by an external, seemingly objective authority. This creates a subtle but profound cognitive dissonance. We begin to distrust our own feelings, our own interoception, the sense of our body's internal condition.
The question shifts from "how do I feel this morning" to "what does my app say about how I should feel this morning?" This outsourcing of self-awareness is the core of the obsession. The focus moves away from the actual lived experience of well-being and onto the optimization of the metrics that represent it. We are no longer trying to get a good night's sleep. We are trying to achieve a high sleep score. We are not exercising to feel energized and strong. We are exercising to close our rings. The numbers, which were meant to be a map of our reality, become the territory itself. This can lead to a new, digitally induced form of anxiety. Waking up to a poor readiness score can create a self-fulfilling prophecy, a nocebo effect where the suggestion of being ill-prepared for the day makes us feel sluggish and unfocused, regardless of our actual physical state. We develop a fixation on the data, a constant, low-level hum of concern about our performance. Did I get enough deep sleep? Is my resting heart rate low enough? The self is no longer a holistic entity to be experienced, but a dashboard of key performance indicators to be managed. The promise of the quantified self was to give us a clearer mirror, but the algorithms that power its modern incarnation have turned that mirror into a screen. And a screen does not just reflect an image, it projects one. It tells us what to see, how to feel,
and who we are supposed to be. The data points are no longer just our own. They are filtered, interpreted, and fed back to us in a way that shapes our perception of ourselves. One notification, one score, one closed ring at a time. The ultimate question then is not whether we are successfully quantifying the self, but whether in the process we are allowing the algorithm to define it.
Normative nudging. Let us begin with a simple, familiar choice. You are browsing an online store, searching for a new pair of headphones. Two models catch your eye. They are similar in price and features, and you find yourself in a state of indecision. Then you notice it. Beneath one of the products, a small, unobtrusive tag reads bestseller. Almost unconsciously, your finger moves the cursor and you add the bestseller to your cart. You feel you've made a rational, well-informed decision. But have you? Or was your perception of value subtly yet powerfully hacked? This is the world of normative nudging, a profound and pervasive technique for influencing human behavior. At its core lies a fundamental evolutionary truth. We are social creatures, deeply and instinctively attuned to the actions and beliefs of those around us. For millennia, our survival depended on our ability to fit in, to cooperate, to be part of the tribe. Social exclusion was, quite literally, a death sentence. This ancient wiring has left us with a powerful cognitive bias known as social proof. We look to others to determine the correct way to act, think, and feel, especially in situations of uncertainty. The concept was famously articulated and brought into the mainstream by economists Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein in their landmark book, Nudge. They described how small, seemingly insignificant changes in the way choices are presented, what they called choice architecture, can steer people towards certain decisions without forbidding any options. The classic pre-digital illustration of a normative nudge is the sign in a hotel bathroom. A sign that simply asks guests to reuse their towels has a modest effect. But a sign that says 75% of guests who stayed in this room chose to reuse their towels sees a dramatic increase in compliance. It doesn't command. It simply informs you of the prevailing social norm. It reframes the choice from an abstract environmental decision to a simple question. Do you want to be part of the considerate majority or the wasteful minority? Now introduce the algorithm into this equation. What was once a static sign on a hotel wall has become a dynamic, personalized, and infinitely scalable force. Algorithms have become the master choice architects of our digital age, and normative nudging is one of their most effective tools. When an e-commerce site labels an item a bestseller or shows you that customers who viewed this item ultimately bought that one, it is manufacturing a social norm in real time. It creates a digital crowd and points you towards its perceived center.
When a streaming service presents you with a list of the top 10 movies in your country today, it isn't merely offering suggestions, it is telling you what your national tribe is watching. The fear of missing out, of being left out of the cultural conversation, is a powerful motivator. Social media platforms are perhaps the most potent engines of algorithmic normative nudging. The like, share, and view counts displayed next to every piece of content are not just metrics, they are signals of social consensus. An algorithm identifies a post that is gaining traction and pushes it into more feeds. As more people see it, they are influenced by its apparent popularity and are thus more likely to engage with it themselves. This creates a powerful, self-perpetuating feedback loop where the perception of popularity becomes the cause of popularity. An idea, an opinion, or a product can appear to be a widespread norm, when in reality, its visibility was artificially amplified by a system designed to maximize engagement. The true hack on your perception, therefore, is not merely in the suggestion, it is in the subtle distortion of your social reality. The algorithm constructs a bespoke consensus just for you, making you feel that your subsequent choice
is an act of conformity with a genuine organic majority. You believe you are joining a crowd, but the crowd itself was assembled and made visible to you by an invisible intelligence for a specific purpose. You are not just being sold a product, you are being sold a sense of belonging to the group that buys that product. By understanding this mechanism, we can begin to see the invisible architecture shaping our choices, and in that awareness, reclaim a degree of our cognitive autonomy.
Selective fact highlighting. Welcome. In our continuing journey through the architecture of digital perception, we arrive at a method that is at once remarkably simple and deeply insidious. It is a technique that does not rely on outright fabrication or the creation of fake news. Instead, it operates on a more subtle and therefore more powerful principle: selective fact highlighting. Imagine reality as a vast, dark stage, filled with an infinite number of objects, events, and data points. Now imagine a single powerful spotlight. This spotlight can be moved to illuminate any part of the stage, revealing what is there with perfect clarity and truth. Selective fact highlighting is the act of controlling that spotlight. The deception is not in what the light reveals. Everything it shows is real and verifiable. The deception is in the vast, consequential darkness that surrounds it. It is a hack of omission, not commission. This tactic is, of course, as old as human communication itself. A general in a war would report back to his king by highlighting the territories gained and the heroic charges, while conveniently omitting the staggering casualty counts and the supply lines stretched to their breaking point. A political campaign will endlessly broadcast a chart showing a 1% drop in unemployment, a true fact, while never mentioning the corresponding 5% drop in wages for the median worker, also a true fact. The narrative is shaped not by lies, but by a carefully curated selection of truths. What makes this age-old technique a uniquely modern and algorithmic threat is scale, speed, and personalization. In the past, a propagandist or marketing executive had to craft a single, selective message for a mass audience. Today, the algorithm crafts a unique, selective message just for you. Here is how the mechanism functions. Your digital behavior, every click, every like, every share, every second you linger on a video is a signal. You might, for instance, show a fleeting interest in articles critical of a new green energy initiative. You might click on one headline that highlights the immense land use required for a solar farm. This is a fact. It is a valid concern. The algorithm, however, does not register your interest as a nuanced desire for a balanced perspective. It registers it as a signal for engagement. Its prime directive is to keep you engaged, to keep you on the platform. So it begins to adjust your spotlight. It shows you another fact: the carbon footprint involved in manufacturing solar panels. Then another: the intermittent nature of wind power. Then a story about a rare bird species threatened by a wind turbine. Each piece of information it feeds you can be traced back to a legitimate source. Each one is a fact.
But your information feed is now a relentless, curated stream of negative truths about green energy. The algorithm is not showing you the countervailing facts, the data on melting ice caps, the measurable reduction in air pollution in cities that adopt clean energy, the long-term economic benefits, or the data on fossil fuel spills. These facts still exist on the stage, but the algorithm has aimed your spotlight away from them. The result is the construction of a personalized reality tunnel. Within this tunnel, your beliefs are not challenged, they are fortified with a steady diet of confirming evidence. Two people can be presented with entirely factual, yet diametrically opposed narratives about the exact same topic, be it a political candidate, a public health measure, or a consumer product. They each feel completely informed, armed with verifiable data, and are therefore utterly bewildered at how the other person can be so profoundly wrong. They are not arguing about facts. They are arguing from two different, algorithmically curated sets of facts. This is the subtle genius of the hack. It bypasses our natural skepticism towards outright lies. It flatters our intelligence by presenting us with what appears to be evidence, allowing us to draw our own conclusions.
but the conclusion was predetermined the moment the first fact was selected for us. We are led down a path, believing we are exploring, when in fact we are on a guided tour. The most sophisticated hack on our perception is not the one that feeds us falsehoods, but the one that starves us of context. And in the digital world, the algorithm is the master of this selective starvation. Algorithmic curation of memory. Consider for a moment the nature of memory. For most of human history, it was an entirely internal, deeply personal process. To remember was an act of deliberate, sometimes difficult recollection. We might be aided by a physical artifact, a faded photograph in a shoebox, a pressed flower in a book, a handwritten letter. The curation of our past was a manual, tactile endeavor, defined by what we chose to keep and by the natural, chaotic process of forgetting. This entire paradigm has been quietly and fundamentally re-architected. We are now living in the age of algorithmic memory curation, a subtle yet profound hack of our personal history. This transition did not happen overnight. It began with the digitization of our lives. We moved from physical photo albums to folders of JPEGs on a hard drive. The first problem was one of scale. We began generating more data about our lives, more photos, more status updates, more check-ins than we could ever reasonably organize or revisit. Our digital past became a vast, unstructured ocean. And into this chaos, the algorithm arrived, offering a solution. It would be our personal archivist. Platforms like Google Photos, Apple Photos, and Facebook began offering features with names like Memories, On This Day, or For You. On the surface, their function is simple: to surface moments from your past for you to re-experience. But the mechanism behind this is far from simple, and its consequences are far from neutral. The algorithm is not a passive archivist retrieving files at random. It is an active curator with a very specific goal: to maximize your engagement. To achieve this, the algorithm analyzes a vast array of signals to determine which memories are most likely to provoke a strong and usually positive emotional response. It looks at the original engagement on a photo or post. How many likes, comments, and shares did it receive years ago? It employs image recognition to identify smiling faces, scenic landscapes, or gatherings of people it knows you are close to. It cross-references temporal data, understanding the significance of anniversaries, birthdays, and yearly milestones. It even learns from your reactions to its previous offerings. If you smile and share a memory of a beach vacation, it learns that this category of memory is highly effective, and it will prioritize similar ones in the future. This creates a powerful, effective feedback loop. The algorithm presents a memory it predicts you will like. You feel a pang of happy nostalgia, you engage with the memory, and that engagement signal reinforces the algorithm's choice. The result is a form of rosy retrospection on an industrial scale.
The algorithm, in its quest for engagement, preferentially selects the moments of peak positive emotion: the wedding, the graduation, the perfect sunset, the laughing child. Your past, as presented back to you, becomes a highlight reel. It is a sanitized, smoothed-over narrative, polished to a retrospective gloss. The hack, then, is twofold. First, it is a hack of omission. What is not being shown? The difficult days, the quiet struggles, the mundane and unremarkable moments that form the true texture of a life. These moments rarely generate the strong engagement signals the algorithm seeks. They are computationally uninteresting. And so, they are left in the digital dust, their salience in our minds gradually diminishing with every algorithmically curated highlight we see instead. We are subtly trained to forget the ordinary in favor of the exceptional. Second, and more profoundly, this process hacks the very mechanics of memory itself. Neuroscience tells us that memory is not a static recording.
but a malleable, reconstructive process. Every time we recall a memory, we are not simply playing a video file, we are rebuilding it. And in that process, we can subtly alter it. When an algorithm constantly prompts the recall of specific positive memories, it strengthens the neural pathways associated with them. In essence, it is directing our brain's own reinforcement learning. The memories the algorithm favors become easier and more vivid to recall, while those it ignores are allowed to atrophy. The algorithm becomes a co-author of our autobiography, silently guiding the narrative, deciding which chapters are worth rereading and which are best left forgotten. Our perception of who we were is slowly, imperceptibly sculpted by a system designed not for our psychological well-being, but for our continued attention. The question is no longer just, what do we remember, but what are we being told to remember?